My name is Caroline Mercer. I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how my mother told me to go live in the streets after I moved back home to help my dying father. Then went online and bragged that my sister had stepped up and done what her useless daughter never could. What she didn't know was that I had already paid nearly $50,000 toward my father's care. What she also didn't know was that I keep records when people lie. If you've never grown up as the designated disappointment in your own family, let me explain something. It doesn't matter what you actually accomplish. Not really. Once someone decides who you are to them, facts stop mattering. You can build a business, pay your own bills, save someone's life, hold everything together with both hands while everyone else stands around posing for sympathy. And still, in their version of the story, you're the unstable one, the lazy one, the selfish one, the problem. That was me in my mother's eyes. Always had been. My younger years were full of little lessons dressed up as family dynamics. My sister Bridget was the golden child, responsible, reliable, photogenic, easy to praise in public. I was the one my mother spoke about with a sigh already loaded in her throat, as if I'd exhausted her before I even opened my mouth. Didn't matter that Bridget and I lived completely different lives. Didn't matter that I had built something real. Didn't matter that I hadn't asked them for anything since I was 22. In our house, Bridget was sacrifice. I was inconvenience. My father was the only person who ever made that feel less absolute. He worked 40 years as a machinist, the kind of man who came home with metal dust in the creases of his hands and tiny silver shavings stuck to the cuffs of his socks. He didn't understand the kind of work I did. Not really. The first time I tried explaining cybersecurity consulting to him, he stared at me for a few seconds, nodded once, and said, "Sounds important, sweetheart." That was enough. He didn't need to understand my world to respect it. He trusted me without needing a performance. My mother was different. To her, anything that didn't look like clocking in under fluorescent lights for somebody else barely counted as work. I ran a cybersecurity company, remote consulting, penetration testing, risk audits for financial institutions, steady clients, real contracts, actual revenue. But if you listened to my mother describe me, you'd think I spent my days in pajama pants playing video games in a dark room while pretending to be employed. Bridget, meanwhile, was a dental hygienist. My mother loved that. It was visible, easy to explain, easy to brag about to church friends and women from Facebook groups who treated ordinary family dysfunction like competitive suffering. "Bridget is so independent," she'd post. "Thank God one of my daughters understands responsibility." I could have wired $10,000 across the table while she said it, and it still wouldn't have changed the sentence. One memory tells you everything. A few years earlier, Bridget moved back home to save money. My mother charged her nothing. No rent, no utilities, no grocery contribution, nothing. I came by for Christmas dinner and got asked, before dessert, whether I was planning to help cover food since I had no children and less real responsibility. My father tried to say something. He always did, a little too softly. "Elaine, that's enough." And my mother shut him down the way she always did. Quick, clean, public enough to make pushing back feel embarrassing. I moved out for good at 22 after I landed my first major tech job. Best decision I ever made. After that, I kept my relationship with my mother as limited as I could without cutting my father out too. I still saw him regularly, lunch sometimes, coffee when I was in the area, quiet little stretches of conversation about weather, traffic, football, broken appliances, things neither of us really cared about, but both understood were code for "I'm still here." Then January 2024 happened. My father was diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. There are moments in life that split everything into before and after, and that was one of them. The oncologist didn't dress it up. Aggressive chemo every 2 weeks, constant labs, medication management, weekly monitoring of his CA 19-9 levels, 12 rounds of treatment if he tolerated them. Maybe a Whipple procedure later if the tumor responded. Maybe. That word sat in my chest like ice. Maybe the treatment would buy him time. Maybe his body would hold. Maybe we'd get lucky. But there was no maybe about the logistics. They were brutal. Appointments stacked on appointments. Insurance approvals. Pharmacy calls. Infusion schedules. Side effect tracking. Temperature monitoring. Pain management. Hydration. Food. Sleep. Timing. Documentation. Every mistake mattered. Every delay could become its own kind of danger. My mother called me crying the night the treatment plan was confirmed. "Your father needs you," she said. "Please come home." I didn't say yes immediately. That mattered to me then, and it still does now. I asked about other options first: a home health aide, a rotating schedule with Bridget, part-time care support, paid help for the heavier days, something sustainable, something structured, something that didn't require me moving back into the house where I'd spent years being treated like a tolerated failure. My mother rejected all of it almost instantly. Family takes care of family. What she meant was, family should provide free labor I can supervise. But my father was sick, so I moved back in. I did it with one condition. I said it in the kitchen the day I brought my overnight bags in. Calm, direct, looking at both of them, not just her. "I'm here for Dad," I said, "not for family politics." My father gave me this tired little nod, like he was grateful I'd said it out loud. My mother smiled the way people do when they've already decided your boundaries are decorative. Bridget, of course, did not move in. She stayed at her apartment, visited maybe once a month, brought coffee no one asked for, took photos in waiting rooms, and posted captions about fighting this together. Together. That word almost made me laugh every time I saw it. Because while she was collecting soft-angle evidence of devotion, I was the one doing the real work. I managed the medication schedule. I handled insurance calls. I coordinated with the oncology office. I drove him to appointments, tracked side effects, picked up prescriptions, dealt with prior authorizations, monitored refill windows, and kept a backup go bag in my car with his insurance cards, medication list, emergency contacts, and copies of his records. That's the thing about serious illness people don't understand until they live inside it. The patient isn't the only one carrying it. There's always someone behind the scenes making sure the machine doesn't break. That was me, every day. And because my work was remote, I was also running my company in the spaces between all of it. Early mornings, late nights, laptop open at the kitchen island. Reports written while infusion pumps dripped poison into my father's veins to save his life. Calls taken from parking lots. Security audits reviewed in waiting rooms. Contracts handled quietly while everyone around me assumed I was doing nothing because I wasn't leaving for an office in sensible shoes. To my mother, all of that was sitting around the house. 2 weeks after I moved in, she cornered me in the kitchen while my father was asleep upstairs. I was halfway through a security audit report for a credit union in Dallas. Laptop open, notes spread out, coffee gone cold. She leaned against the counter and folded her arms. "Since you're doing so well with your little computer thing," she said, "you can help keep this house afloat." I didn't look up right away. That annoyed her. "Medical bills are piling up," she continued. "You're here anyway. How much do you make?" I lifted my eyes from the screen. "My father's care is being handled." "That's not what I asked." Her voice had that brittle sharpness it got when she wasn't getting immediate compliance. "How much do you make, Caroline? What's in your savings? Do you even have savings? You got real cash flow, or are you just pretending again?" I sat back slowly in the chair. "You are not auditing my life." Her jaw tightened. "You are a grown woman living under my roof. I moved back here to manage Dad's care. And if you're doing as well as you claim, prove it." There it was. Not concern. Not collaboration. Proof. Submission. Documentation she could hold in her hand and feel powerful over. I went back to my screen. Drop it. For a second, the room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator motor kick on. Then she made this small, disbelieving sound, like I had violated the natural order of the universe by refusing to explain myself. What she didn't know was that I already had a spreadsheet. Every provider, every payment, every confirmation number, every copay, every lab fee, every prescription. PDFs saved. Backups in cloud storage. Encrypted copies on external drives. Date-stamped receipts filed by category. And what she really didn't know was that I had already paid close to $50,000 toward my father's care over the past several months. Directly to providers. Quietly. My father knew. My mother didn't. He'd been depositing my transfers and telling her insurance had covered more than expected because somewhere deep down, I think he already understood that if she knew how much I was paying, she would stop seeing his illness as a crisis and start seeing it as an opening. 2 days before everything truly blew apart, I took my father to one of his oncology appointments. My mother insisted on coming. That should have warned me how bad the day was going to get. From the moment we got there, she was impossible. Complaining about the wait, complaining about the chairs, complaining that no one respected spouses anymore, complaining that the front desk girl had an attitude because she'd politely asked her not to stand in the doorway. When the nurse called my father's name, my mother pushed herself up and moved like she was walking into a board meeting she planned to dominate. Inside the exam room, she interrupted constantly. The oncologist, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with the exact kind of patients serious medicine requires, was explaining scan results and treatment timing when my mother cut across her to ask whether the next infusion could be moved because it interfered with Bridget's birthday dinner. Not because my father was too weak, not because of a medical issue, because of dinner. I remember staring at her for a second, not fully believing I'd heard that sentence correctly. My father looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with chemo. The doctor kept trying to redirect. My mother kept talking over her. At one point, I actually stepped between them, not aggressively, just enough to break the line of fire, and said, "Can we focus on the cancer for 5 minutes?" The room went still. My mother shot me a look full of venom. The doctor finished the appointment professionally, but after we stepped into the hallway, she pulled me aside. Her voice was low. "Your mother cannot be in exam rooms anymore." I held her gaze. "Good, I need that documented." She nodded once. "Your father's stress spikes when she's present. It affects treatment compliance, and frankly, she is interfering with care. I'm adding a note to the chart and asking patient advocacy to flag it." I felt something cold and clear settle into place inside me. "Thank you." That was the moment the story in my head changed. Up until then, I'd still been operating under the idea that my mother was difficult, selfish, emotionally exhausting, maybe even manipulative. But this was different. This was a medical professional looking me in the eye and confirming that my mother's presence was making my father's treatment harder. Not emotionally harder, clinically harder. That night, after I'd already rescheduled follow-ups, confirmed pharmacy delivery, and paid another office balance directly, my mother made a Facebook post. "Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight almost alone, trusting God's plan even when others don't understand the sacrifice." 43 likes, 12 comments. Bridget replied, "You're so strong, Mom. We don't deserve you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I took a screenshot, saved it with the date, and created a folder on my laptop called Documentation. I didn't comment. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just started building a file. Because when someone is committed to lying about you, the worst thing you can do is keep trying to win in real time. You let them talk. You let them get comfortable. You let them believe performance is protection. Then you save everything. And a few days later, I found the first piece of proof that made the entire shape of my mother's behavior click into something far uglier than I wanted to admit. I was sitting at the dining room table, organizing my father's weekly pill case, when his phone buzzed beside me. He'd fallen asleep in the recliner. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it, but with oncology offices, specialty pharmacies, and insurance departments calling from numbers that change constantly, I checked the screen just to make sure it wasn't urgent. It wasn't the clinic. It was a bank alert. Login attempt from new device. My stomach tightened. I woke my father gently. "Dad," I said, "did you just try to log into your bank account?" He blinked at me, groggy and confused. "No, why?" I showed him the screen, and I watched the color drain from his face. For a second, he just stared. Then he said quietly, "Your mother asked for my password last week." I went very still. "What did she say?" "She said she needed to make sure insurance payments were going through." His voice sounded smaller than I'd heard it in years. I told her no. There are moments when anger doesn't come in hot. It comes in cold. Precise. Useful. I picked up the phone again. "Okay," I said. "We're changing everything tonight." My father was still sitting in the recliner when I brought my laptop over and pulled up every account I could think of. Banking first, then insurance, then Medicare, then Social Security, then the patient portal. Anything tied to his identity, his money, his treatment, or his records. I changed every password, turned on two-factor authentication, linked recovery options to my phone and email, and installed a password manager so he wouldn't have to keep pretending he could remember 15 complicated logins while his body was being flooded with poison every other week. He watched me work in silence for a while. Finally, he said, "I didn't think she'd actually try." I didn't answer right away, because the truth was I had started to think exactly that. Not because I wanted to, because I had seen enough. I took screenshots of the alert, the timestamp, the device notification, everything. Saved them in the documentation folder under a new subfolder, Financial Access Attempts. Then I looked at him and said as gently as I could, "From now on, if Mom puts anything in front of you to sign or asks for any account information, you tell me first." He nodded. There was shame in his face, but not because he'd done anything wrong. It was the shame of realizing someone you built a life with might be treating your illness like an opportunity. That look stayed with me. 2 days later, it got worse. I was upstairs on a work call with a client when I heard raised voices from the kitchen. Not loud at first. Not the kind of explosion that makes you run. More like pressure building inside a sealed room. Then I heard my father say my name. I muted myself, apologized to the client, and went downstairs. My mother was standing beside the kitchen table with a sheet of paper in her hand, pushing it toward him while he sat there looking pale and overwhelmed. "Just sign it," she said. "It's for the medical bills. I need authorization to talk to billing." I crossed the room and took the paper out of her hand before she could stop me. And there it was. Not a billing authorization. Not a narrow release form. A broad financial power of attorney. Permanent. Pre-filled. His name, his address, his social security number already typed in. Everything ready except the signature at the bottom. My heartbeat didn't speed up. It slowed. That was the scary part. "He's not signing this," I said. My mother's head snapped toward me. "Mind your business." This became my business the second you tried to slide legal control of his finances in front of a cancer patient and call it paperwork. Her face changed immediately, twisting with rage. "This is between me and my husband." I looked at my father. "Did you ask for this?" He shook his head. My mother stepped closer, voice rising. "He needs help. I'm his wife. I should be the one handling these things." "No," I said, still holding the paper. "You want to be the one controlling these things." She made a sound like I had insulted God in her kitchen. "You are poisoning him against me." That line almost would have worked if not for the document in my hand. I set it flat on the counter and took photos of every page. My mother lunged like she was going to grab it back. I moved it out of reach. "Don't," I said quietly. That stopped her more than yelling would have. She turned to my father, expecting him to fix it, to restore the old balance where she spoke and everyone else adjusted around her. Instead, he said weak but clear, "Stop." The room froze. My mother stared at him. He swallowed once and said, "Garrett." Then he stopped himself, exhausted, and corrected. "Caroline is handling things." It hit me then, the strange ache of hearing him almost reach for the old shape of the story, before correcting himself toward the present, not because he didn't know who I was, because in crises, people sometimes reach for habit first. But he corrected it. He chose me. My mother looked at him as if betrayal had just climbed out of his mouth wearing my face. I folded the document and slipped it into my folder. "From now on," I said to my father, "don't sign anything she gives you unless I've reviewed it." My mother's face went blotchy with fury. "You think a few errands and fake emails make you his caregiver?" "No," I said. "The fact that I'm the one keeping him alive does." I went back upstairs and finished my client call with my pulse steady and my jaw locked so hard it hurt. When the call ended, I added a new section to the documentation folder. Attempted power of attorney. Photographs. Timestamp. Notes. Summary of the exchange while it was still fresh. That same week, my mother crossed a line that erased any last instinct I had to keep seeing this as a family conflict. She canceled one of my father's chemo infusions. I found out in the lobby. We had arrived early that morning because his neuropathy had been worse, and I wanted time to talk to the nurse before pre-med started. He was tired, nauseated, and shivering lightly. From the over-air-conditioned clinic, the way patients always do, in places built more for machines than comfort. I checked him in. The receptionist frowned at the screen, then frowned harder. "I'm sorry," she said. "This infusion was canceled 2 days ago." I stared at her. "What?" She clicked around, clearly uncomfortable. "It says someone called to reschedule for next month." Next month! For people who have never sat inside a chemo calendar, that might not sound catastrophic. For pancreatic cancer, for this protocol, for this stage, it was insane. The oncologist had been very clear. Timing mattered. Spacing mattered. You don't casually bump treatment because something social came up. "Who canceled it?" I asked. The receptionist hesitated. "It says the caller identified herself as his wife." My father turned to look at me, and I felt something inside me go completely cold. "Can you pull the notes?" I asked. She nodded and started scrolling. The caller knew his date of birth, address, and said there was a family conflict. The staff member noted she was insistent. Insistent. That was such a polite word for sabotage. I pulled out my phone and called my mother right there in the clinic lobby. She picked up on the second ring. "What? Did you cancel Dad's infusion?" A pause. Then, in the same irritated tone someone might use to explain why they moved a lunch reservation, she said, "It was too close to Bridget's birthday dinner." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. I turned away from the front desk because I needed a wall at my back to keep from saying something irreversible. "You canceled chemotherapy," I said slowly, "for a birthday dinner?" "He needed to be there for family," she snapped. "1 week isn't going to kill him." I closed my eyes. The cancer does not pause because Bridget wants cake. You are so dramatic. No, I said, and my voice came out low and razor thin. You could have killed him. I hung up before she could answer. Then I turned back to the receptionist. I need the patient advocate, now. And I need this documented in his chart as unauthorized interference with treatment. The clinic manager came out within minutes. I explained everything once, clearly. No theatrics, no rambling, just facts. My father sat beside me, pale and humiliated, hearing strangers talk about his wife like she was a threat to his treatment because she was. The manager reviewed the notes, pulled the phone log, and then did something that told me how serious this had become. She retrieved the call recording. We listened to it. My mother's voice was unmistakable, controlled, confident, self-righteous, demanding that the appointment be moved because family obligations came first, and the office needed to respect a wife's authority. I looked at my father while it played. He stared at the floor. When it ended, the manager said, "We're rescheduling him immediately." Then she lowered her voice and added, "This is a patient safety issue." The phrase landed hard, because that was the truth stripped of family language. Not a misunderstanding, not a disagreement, not stress. A patient safety issue. The clinic locked his scheduling profile so only my father or I could make changes. They flagged my mother's number system-wide, added notes for nursing staff, added notes for front desk, added notes for advocacy. I requested a printed incident report. They gave me one. I folded it carefully and slid it into my bag. By the time we got to the car, my father looked 20 years older than he had that morning. I got him settled in the passenger seat, shut the door, and stood there for a few seconds with one hand on the roof of the car. The sun was too bright. The parking garage smelled like hot concrete and engine oil. My reflection in the window looked calmer than I felt, which was probably for the best. When I got into the driver's seat, my father said, very quietly, "I didn't know she'd do that." I started the engine, but didn't pull out yet. "Dad," I said, "you need to stop giving her the benefit of the doubt. She tried to get into your bank account. She tried to get you to sign power of attorney. She just canceled life-saving treatment for a birthday dinner." His face folded in on itself for a second. Not crying. Worse. The expression of someone watching the last story they've told themselves collapse in real time. "I know," he said. We drove home in silence. That night I showed him everything. Not just the clinic report. Everything. The bank alert screenshots. The notes from the attempted password access. The photographs of the power of attorney form. The incident report from the oncology office. The growing sequence of Facebook martyr posts. My own spreadsheet of payments I had made directly toward his care. The voicemails. The dates. The patterns. All of it organized, labeled, time-stamped, impossible to wave away as emotion. I spread it across the dining room table the way prosecutors lay out evidence in crime shows. Only this wasn't television. This was my life. My father sat there with both hands wrapped around a mug of tea he had forgotten to drink. He read slowly. Sometimes he would stop and stare at a page for so long I thought he'd lost the line. Finally, he looked up at me. His hands were shaking. Not from chemo. From grief. "She's not trying to help me," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," I said. "She's trying to control your care, your money, and your access to everyone around you, and she's willing to hurt you to keep that control." He closed his eyes for a second. Then he opened them and said the sentence that changed everything. "From now on, you handle it." I didn't move. He kept going. Medical, financial, scheduling, all of it. If anyone has questions, they talk to you. There are moments when relief doesn't feel warm. It feels devastating, because it means the thing you were afraid was true has finally been said out loud. The next day, I took him back to the oncology office. We met with the doctor after labs. He spoke before I had to. "Doctor," he said, voice thin but steady, "going forward, my daughter runs the show. Any questions about treatment, scheduling, medications, billing, any of it, you talk to Caroline." The oncologist looked at him carefully, then nodded. "All right." We completed everything that mattered. HIPAA authorization, healthcare proxy, witness signatures, notarized copies. The doctor documented that he was fully competent and making the decision clearly, voluntarily, and without coercion. She also added a note stating that ongoing family conflict had already negatively affected treatment adherence. I got copies for myself, one for his chart, one for him, one scanned into secure storage before we even left the parking lot. By the time we got home, my mother was already waiting in the kitchen. I think she knew. Maybe from the way the clinic stopped taking her calls. Maybe from the silence where compliance used to be. Maybe because people like her can smell control leaving the room. Her face was tight and hot with rage. "What did you do?" she asked. My father walked past her and sat down without answering. "So I did. He chose me as his healthcare proxy. Her expression changed so fast it almost looked like fear before it hardened back into fury. You manipulated him. No, I said. You forced him to protect himself. She turned to him. Tell her this isn't true. He didn't. He just sat there, tired and quiet, refusing to rescue her from the consequences of her own behavior. And that, more than anything, was what broke the balance of the house. She looked back at me with something wild in her eyes. You think you've won something? I met her stare. No, I said, I think you just lost access. That was the word that made her flinch. Access. Because that was always what this had been. Not devotion. Not concern. Access to his care. Access to his information. Access to his money. Access to the stories she got to tell other people about herself. For the rest of that evening, she moved through the house like a storm searching for somewhere to land. Cabinets slammed. Doors shut too hard. Her voice kept rising in little bursts from the other room while she talked to Bridget on speakerphone, spinning the first draft of a new victim narrative. I didn't listen closely. I didn't need to. I knew the shape of it already. Unstable daughter, ungrateful daughter, controlling daughter, poor suffering wife, poor devoted sister, family under attack. I stayed at the dining table with my father's paperwork spread neatly in front of me and scanned every signed page into 3 separate backups. Then I made a new folder. Medical authority, active. Because once you understand someone is willing to interfere with cancer treatment to keep control, you stop hoping they'll calm down. You prepare for retaliation. And I was right to, because after the paperwork was signed, my mother stopped pretending she wanted cooperation. What she wanted now was punishment. The explosion came 2 days later. Not out of nowhere. Nothing with my mother ever came out of nowhere. It built. Pressure. Silence. Little sharp comments thrown like needles into passing moments. The sound of cabinets closing, just a little too hard. The way she stopped speaking directly to me and started speaking around me, as if I were already something she had decided to remove. That morning, the house felt wrong before anything even happened. My father was upstairs resting after a rough night. I was at the kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing a penetration test report while keeping one eye on the medication schedule I'd set alarms for every 3 hours. My mother walked in, stood there for a second, then pulled out a chair and sat across from me. No greeting, no build-up. Just straight into it. You think you're special now? I didn't look up immediately. That always bothered her more than anything. Her voice sharpened. You think clicking buttons on a computer while your father suffers makes you better than people who actually work? There it was. The same line she'd been repeating since I was 19. Different words. Same accusation. I closed my laptop slowly. Say what you want to say. She leaned forward, eyes bright with anger, spit catching at the edges of her words. I let you move back into this house. I gave you a roof, and you can't even get a real job to help with your father's medical bills? My father's voice floated weakly from the hallway. Elaine, please. Be quiet, she snapped, without even turning her head. I'm talking to her. Then back to me. You are an embarrassment. I'm done pretending you're going to amount to anything. If this had been 2 weeks earlier, that would have hurt. It would have landed somewhere soft and old inside me. But something had shifted. Now it just registered. Filed. Another data point. You've got 1 week, she continued. 1 week to show me proof of employment at a real job. Manufacturing, warehouse, something with a time clock, something with pay stubs I can verify. There it was again. Verification. Control. Paper she could hold. Evidence she could twist. I felt something settle into place inside my chest. Not anger. Clarity. No, I said. She blinked. No? You're not getting pay stubs. And you're not touching his care. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood. You don't get to make that decision. I already did. Her face flushed deep red. Then get out. The words hung in the air for half a second. And then she said them again, louder. Get out of my house. Behind her, my father had made it to the edge of the hallway, one hand braced against the wall. Stop, he said, but his voice was too thin to cut through what she had already decided. She pointed toward the front door. I am not going to support a useless adult who refuses to contribute. You want to play caregiver? Do it somewhere else. I stood up slowly. The kitchen felt very small all of a sudden. Same scratched laminate table I'd done homework on as a kid. Same cheap chairs that squeaked when you shifted your weight. Same fluorescent light overhead that buzzed like it had been waiting its entire life for this moment. I looked at my father, not at her. Dad, I said, calm and steady, we're leaving tonight. My mother laughed. A sharp, disbelieving sound. What? Pack what you need. Medications first. You can't just... I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on him. Are you coming with me? There are moments where everything pauses. where the entire future balances on one answer. My father didn't hesitate. He nodded. I'm coming with you. The sound my mother made then wasn't anger. It was panic. You're not taking him anywhere, she shouted. This is my house. He's my husband. I turned to her for the first time. Your house? She faltered, just for a second. My house, she repeated, but it came out thinner. Dad bought this place in 1998, I said. Your name's not on the deed. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You can't. We're leaving, I said, already moving toward the stairs. Dad, I'm grabbing your meds. She followed me, voice rising behind me, words tumbling over each other. You ungrateful girl. After everything I've done, you can't do this. He's my... She stopped. Mid-sentence. I turned slowly. You're what? I asked. Her face went blank. Too blank. You're taking away my husband, she said quickly. But we both knew that wasn't what she had almost said. I held her gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then I turned away. Because I didn't need confirmation anymore. I already had it. Upstairs I moved fast. Not frantic. Efficient. There's a difference. I packed his medications first, organizing them into a cooler bag with ice packs for the temperature-sensitive ones, pulled his oxygen concentrator from the corner, grabbed the portable tank, blood pressure cuff, thermometer, his medical folder, insurance cards, backup prescriptions. Clothes went into a duffel. I added his favorite pillow without thinking. Hospital pillows were terrible, and sleep mattered. Every detail mattered. Behind me, I could hear my mother moving through the house, narrating loudly to no one, building her version of the story in real time. She's stealing him. She's always been like this. Selfish, unstable. My father sat on the edge of the bed while I packed, watching, quiet. But there was something in his face I hadn't seen in months. Relief. Like he had been holding his breath inside this house and had finally been given permission to exhale. It took me 40 minutes. 40 minutes to dismantle everything necessary to keep him alive and portable. By the time I helped him down the stairs, my mother had positioned herself near the front door like she could physically block reality from happening. You walk out that door, she said, voice shaking, and don't come back. I didn't respond. I opened the door. The porch light was still on, even though it was daylight. I guided my father carefully down the steps and into my car. My Audi A5, fully paid off. Quiet engine, clean interior. Everything about it, something my mother would have called unnecessary. I got him settled, seat adjusted, blanket across his lap. Oxygen secured. Then I closed the door. When I turned back, she was standing in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, eyes burning. This isn't over, she said. No, I agreed. It's not. And then I got in this car and drove away. My condo was downtown, 27th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Not cheap, not flashy, just mine. My mother had no idea it existed the way it did. She thought I slept in their guest room full time. Probably imagined I had roommates. Probably imagined I barely got by. I didn't correct her. I never corrected her. Because correcting her never changed anything. Reality didn't matter to her. Narrative did. I helped my father inside, got him settled on the couch, water within reach, medications lined up. Stay here, I said. Rest. I'm going back for the rest of your things. He nodded, then caught my wrist lightly. Be careful, he said. With your mother? I gave him a small smile. I know. And I did. That's why I had already started documenting everything. That night she called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Caroline, it's your mother. You kidnapped your father. I'm calling the police. You stole him from his home. He needs me, not some selfish child playing house. Bring him back immediately, or there will be consequences. We need to talk about money and your father's care. I saved it. Time-stamped. Filed. No response. The next morning, Bridget texted. Bridget, Mom's been calling me nonstop and crying. What did you do? I looked at the message for a second, then typed back. Me. I took Dad with me. She kicked me out. He chose to come. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, Bridget, you can't just take him. I exhaled slowly. Me. He's not an object. Bridget. He needs his wife, not his loser daughter who can't even hold a real job. I stared at the screen. It was almost impressive how perfectly she echoed our mother. Same words, same tone, same certainty. I took a screenshot, saved it. No argument. No explanation. Just documentation. That afternoon, the oncology office called. The nurse sounded stressed. Caroline, your mother has called 3 times this morning demanding to know where your father is. She's threatening to report us for patient abandonment. I leaned back in my chair, already opening my notes. He's with me. He chose to leave. I have his HIPAA authorization and healthcare proxy. She has no legal authority. We understand, the nurse said quickly. We just needed to clarify for documentation. She was very aggressive. Document everything she says, I said. Every threat, every accusation. There was a brief pause. Then the nurse lowered her voice slightly. We already have been. The social worker flagged her weeks ago. This latest call, asking about financial details she doesn't have authorization for, that's concerning. Good. It wasn't just me seeing it anymore. Can you add a hard block? I asked. No information to anyone except me or my father. Already done. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you. When the call ended, I added another section to the folder. Medical harassment ongoing. Because that's what it was now. Not conflict. Harassment. Over the next 2 weeks, my mother escalated. Not directly to me. Not at first. Publicly. Facebook posts about sacrifice. About ungrateful children. About fighting alone. Church friends filling in the comments with sympathy and outrage. People who had never seen a single oncology report in their lives demanding I be arrested for kidnapping. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't defend myself. I just watched. And saved everything. Because the louder she got, the more evidence she created. Then she crossed into something else entirely. I was in the middle of reviewing a client report when a new email came through. Subject line, professional concern. I opened it. Read it once, then read it again. To whom it may concern, I am writing to inform you that Caroline Mercer, who claims to work for your company, has kidnapped her dying father and is currently holding him against his will. It went on. Accusations, lies, claims that I was unstable, dangerous, a risk to any organization I represented. I sat there for a second, very still, because this wasn't just family anymore. This was business, reputation, income, everything I had built. I forwarded the email to my lawyer. No explanation, just one line. Add this to the file. He replied in under 10 minutes. This is actionable. Defamation, harassment, interference with business relationships. I'm drafting a cease and desist now. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the city through the glass. The skyline was calm, unbothered, unaware. Inside my apartment, my father was sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. And somewhere across the city, my mother was escalating faster than she realized, which was perfect, because I wasn't reacting. I was building a case. And the more she pushed, the stronger it became. 4 days after I moved my father out, my mother called the police. Not as a bluff, not as a threat. She actually did it. I was in the kitchen making coffee when there was a knock at the door. Firm, official, the kind that carries authority even before you open it. I already knew. I checked the camera first. 2 officers. Neutral posture, not aggressive, not casual either. Procedure. I opened the door. Morning, I said. Ma'am, the older officer nodded. We received a call regarding a potential vulnerable adult situation. Your mother claims you removed your father from his home without consent. I stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. No hesitation. No defensiveness. Because the truth doesn't need staging. My father was on the couch, oxygen line in place, medications organized neatly on the table beside him, blanket across his lap, television muted. He looked up as they entered. The younger officer did a quick visual sweep, the kind they're trained to do. Environment, condition, orientation. Everything in order. The older officer stepped closer. Sir, he said gently, we just need to confirm. Are you here of your own free will? My father didn't even look at me. I am, he said. I left voluntarily. Were you coerced or forced in any way? No. Do you wish to remain here? Yes. His voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. Not once. Then he added something I hadn't expected. My wife was interfering with my medical treatment. I came here because my daughter is taking proper care of me. The room went still for a second. That wasn't just confirmation. That was context. The older officer nodded slowly, then turned to me. Do you have documentation showing you're authorized to manage his care? I already had it in my hand. HIPAA authorization. Healthcare proxy. Signed, dated, witnessed, notarized. He looked through the first page, then handed it to his partner. This looks legitimate. It is, I said. He nodded again. We'll document that he's here voluntarily and that you have proper authorization. If your mother calls again, we'll reference this report. I took the card he handed me. Case number visible. Officer names. Date. Time. Another piece of evidence. Thank you, I said. When they left, the apartment felt quieter than it had before they arrived. Not because of the silence, because something had been confirmed. Officially. Legally. This wasn't her story anymore. I called my lawyer immediately. She filed a police report, I said. And? He asked. They came, verified everything, documented that he's here voluntarily. Good, he said. That helps us. That's not enough, I replied. I want a protective order. There was a brief pause. Walk me through everything you have so far. I did. The voicemails, the bank login attempt, the power of attorney, the canceled chemo, the harassment calls to the clinic, the defamatory email to my business, the police report. When I finished, he didn't hesitate. That's more than enough, he said. We'll file tomorrow. When's the hearing? 2 weeks, give or take. Good. One more thing, he added. Your father needs to either appear or provide a written statement. The judge will want to hear from him directly. He'll be there. I didn't even need to ask. The next few days were quiet on the surface, loud underneath. My mother doubled down online. Long posts about betrayal, about losing everything, about a daughter who chose money over family. People commented, shared, speculated. I didn't respond, didn't engage, didn't defend, because I didn't need to. Not anymore. Instead, I sent one message to my aunt, then my uncle, then 2 cousins. Simple, clear, no emotion. Restraining order hearing, April 12th, 2 p.m., Courtroom 4B, Travis County Family Court. Public record. If you want the truth, come see it. That was it. No persuasion, no explanation, just an invitation, because the truth doesn't need convincing. It just needs to be seen. 2 days later, my father and I went to see an attorney. Not for drama, for structure, because illness doesn't wait for family disputes to settle, and I wasn't going to let anything be left exposed. We sat in that office for nearly 2 hours. Paperwork stacked in front of us. Signatures, witnesses, notarization stamps, legal language that turned intention into protection. My father updated everything. His will, his beneficiaries, his accounts. Then he looked at the attorney and said something that shifted the ground under everything that came next. I want her on the deed. The attorney looked up. Joint ownership with survivorship? Yes. I didn't speak, didn't interrupt, because I understood exactly what that meant. Not just practically, emotionally. Trust, formalized. Protection, enforced. The paperwork was drawn up immediately. We signed. Filed it that same afternoon. Just like that, I wasn't just managing his care. I was legally tied to the one asset my mother had been acting like she controlled for decades, and she had no idea. The morning of the hearing, I woke up early. Not because I was nervous, because I wanted everything perfect. My lawyer had prepared 3 binders. Clean, organized, tabbed, each section labeled, each claim backed by evidence. Medical interference, financial misconduct, harassment, false reporting, third-party documentation, every page numbered, every timeline clear. I didn't need drama. I had documentation. We arrived 30 minutes early. Got my father settled in the front row. Oxygen tank beside him. Water within reach. He looked tired, but calm. At 1:50 p.m., my aunt walked in. Then my uncle. Then my cousins. They sat quietly in the back, watching. At 1:55, my mother arrived. With Bridget, and a lawyer who looked like he had been hired 3 days ago. She saw me first. Her face flushed red. Then she saw my father, and it drained completely. Then she saw the rest of the family sitting behind us, and something in her expression broke. She hadn't expected witnesses. All rise? The judge entered. Older woman, sharp eyes. No patience for theatrics. She looked down at the file. Petition for protective order based on harassment, medical interference, and false police reporting. Then she looked at my mother. You're the respondent? Yes, Your Honor. This is a misunderstanding. We'll get to that. Then she turned to my father. And you're the patient? Yes, ma'am. Good, let's begin. My lawyer stood, calm, precise. Your Honor, the respondent filed a false police report claiming her daughter kidnapped her husband. The patient left voluntarily, which is documented in the responding officer's report. He handed over Exhibit A. The respondent also interfered with medical treatment, including canceling a scheduled chemotherapy infusion without consent. The judge looked up. She canceled chemo? Yes, Your Honor. He handed over the clinic report, then the call recording transcript, then the notes from the oncology office documenting behavioral interference. The judge's expression hardened. Continue. She also attempted to gain unauthorized financial control through a pre-filled power of attorney and made repeated attempts to access the patient's bank accounts. Exhibits, photos, timestamps. She sent defamatory communications to the petitioner's business, attempting to damage her professional standing. The email, printed, highlighted. And finally, Your Honor, he paused, then set down a stack of receipts. The petitioner has personally paid approximately $50,000 toward her father's medical care over the past 6 months, while the respondent publicly claims she contributed nothing. Silence. Heavy. Complete. The judge looked at my mother. Your daughter paid $50,000 for your husband's care, and you called her useless? My mother opened her mouth, closed it. I didn't know. Because you weren't authorized to know, the judge said flatly. Then she turned to my father. Sir, tell me what happened. He stood slowly, walked to the witness stand with his oxygen tank. Every step deliberate. I have stage 3 pancreatic cancer, he said. My daughter moved in and managed everything. My wife interfered. She canceled my treatment. She caused stress that made everything worse. He paused, looked directly at the judge. When she told my daughter to leave, I chose to go with her. No hesitation, no confusion, just truth. I'm still choosing that. The judge nodded once. Thank you. Then she turned back to my mother. Do you have anything to say? Tears. Immediate. Practiced. I just want my husband back, she said. I'm his wife. He is competent, the judge cut in. He chooses. That was it. That was the end of her argument. The judge closed the file. Based on the evidence, false police reporting, medical interference, harassment, and defamation, I am granting the protective order. My mother made a choking sound. Effective immediately, the judge continued. 12 months. No contact, direct or indirect. No social media references. No contact with her workplace or medical providers. She signed the order. The sound of the pen on paper was louder than anything that had been said. This hearing is concluded. The gavel didn't need to hit. It was already done. In the hallway, my aunt approached me slowly. Her face looked different, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. I had no idea, she said. I nodded. I know. Why didn't you tell us? I held her gaze. Would you have believed me? She didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Behind us, my mother stepped out of the courtroom. She looked at me, opened her mouth. I raised my hand slightly. Don't, I said. The order is already active. She froze, then turned, and walked away. For the first time in months, my phone stayed quiet. And for the first time in years, the story about me was finally the truth. The house was the last piece. Everything else had already been handled. Medical care secured. Legal authority established. Protective order granted. But my mother and Bridget were still living in that house like none of it applied to them. Like reality was optional. Like paperwork didn't exist if you ignored it long enough. That was their pattern. Ignore. Perform. Delay. Hope something shifts back in their favor. It wasn't going to. I had my lawyer draft the notice to vacate. Formal. Precise. 30 days. Both their names on it. Delivered 2 ways. Certified mail and process server. Documented. Time-stamped. No room for interpretation. The message was simple. You have until May 15th to leave, or the court would do it for you. They ignored it. Of course they did. Instead, my mother escalated online. Posts about being forced out of her home. About losing everything. About a daughter consumed by greed. Bridget followed her lead. Crying selfies. Captions about betrayal. Hashtags about family. I didn't respond. Didn't comment. Didn't defend. I just kept saving everything. Because every post wasn't just noise anymore. It was evidence. May 15th came. And went. They were still there. So the next morning, I filed for eviction. Filing fee. Paperwork. Court date set. May 28th. The hearing was faster than the last one. Cleaner. Because this wasn't emotional. It was property. The judge reviewed the deed. My father's name. My name. Joint ownership. Then the notice. Then proof of delivery. Then the timeline. She didn't look at my mother when she spoke. This property is legally owned by the petitioner and her father. The respondents have no legal claim to occupancy. The notice period has expired. She flipped the page. Eviction granted. That was it. No speeches. No sympathy. Just law. They left before the deadline. No announcement. No goodbye. Just gone. Like people who finally realized the story they'd been telling no longer had a place to live. On May 31st, I changed the locks. New deadbolts. New codes. New keys. I stood in the doorway for a moment after the locksmith left. The house felt different. Quiet. Not tense quiet. Not the kind where something is about to happen. Real quiet. Like the absence of noise that shouldn't have been there in the first place. I drove my father over later that afternoon. He moved slowly through the house. Touching things. Walls. Furniture. Like he was reacquainting himself with a life that had been taken over without him realizing it. It's mine again, he said quietly. I shook my head. Ours. He smiled faintly. Then sat down in his old recliner, and for the first time in months, he looked at peace. 3 days later, the first crack showed up at my door. I was making breakfast when the bell rang. I checked the camera. Bridget. She looked different. Not polished. Not composed. Tired. I opened the door. Didn't step aside. What? Her voice came out thin. Caroline, please. We're not doing this here. I don't have anywhere to go. I didn't react. I thought I could stay at the house until I figured things out. You were given 30 days. She swallowed. I can help with Dad? No. You can't just... I can. I held her gaze. You don't get to ignore everything, treat me like I'm nothing, and then show up asking for help when it's inconvenient for you. Tears filled her eyes. I'm your sister. And I was your sister when you called me useless. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Real. You'll figure it out, I said. Same way I did. Her mouth opened. Closed. Then she turned and walked away. No yelling. No scene. Just gone. The last time my mother showed up, it was at night. I was upstairs organizing my father's medications when I heard a car door slam. Checked the camera. Her. Standing outside the building. Arms crossed. Waiting. Not calling. Not knocking. Just standing. Like presence alone would force a response. I watched her for 10 minutes. Didn't move. Didn't go down. Didn't engage. Then she pulled out her phone. Mine buzzed. Unknown number. Mom, I'm outside. We need to talk. Screenshot. Saved. Another message. Mom, I know you see me. I'm not leaving. Screenshot. Saved. Then she walked up to the call box. Pressed my unit. The intercom buzzed. I let it record. Caroline, it's Mom. Her voice came through, softer now. Please, just 5 minutes. I can fix this. The house, the money. I'm sorry. Just let me up. I didn't answer. I picked up my phone and called my lawyer instead. She's here, I said. Texts, intercom, all recorded. Call non-emergency, he said. Report the violation. Do not engage. I didn't hesitate. I made the call. Gave them the case number. Explained everything. Stayed upstairs. Waited. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. 2 officers. They approached her. She started talking immediately. Fast. Animated. Pointing at the building. I watched the whole thing through the camera. One of the officers pulled up the protective order on his tablet. Showed it to her. She kept talking. Then he pointed to his screen again. Her posture changed. Subtle, but visible. They spoke for a few more minutes, then handed her something. A warning. Documented. Official. She took it, crumpled slightly, then got in her car, and left. One of the officers called me after. We documented the violation, he said. She's been formally warned. Future contact could result in arrest. Thank you, I said. I sent them everything within minutes. Texts, audio, video, all time-stamped, all clean. That was the last time she showed up. No more messages, no more posts, no more calls. Just silence. Now it's just me and my father. His treatments happen on time. No one interferes. No one cancels anything for a dinner. No one demands proof of my life. The house is quiet. My phone is quiet. Everything is stable. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that some people don't see you as family. They see you as access. Access to money. Access to control. Access to a story that makes them look like the victim. And the moment you take that access away, they call it betrayal. But it's not. It's just the first time you stop letting them use you. She told me to go live in the streets. So I did something better. I walked out. Took everything that actually mattered with me and never gave her access again. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and this is the story of how my husband looked me dead in the eyes and told me, "You don't get a say in my friendships." 3 weeks later, he was crying because I filed for divorce. By then, I was already gone. If you've never watched someone you love get slowly rewritten by people who profit from their chaos, let me tell you something. It does not happen all at once. There is no thunderclap, no dramatic soundtrack, no single moment where the room goes black and you say, "Ah, yes, this is where my marriage dies." It happens in layers. A new phrase here, a colder tone there, a glance that lingers too long on the phone screen, a late night explaining it too quickly, a version of your partner that still looks like the person you married but no longer sounds like him, no longer reaches for you, no longer lets silence feel safe. That was what happened to me. I work as a financial analyst for a regional investment firm in Columbus. I'd been doing it for about 12 years by then, long enough to build a real career out of it, long enough to trust numbers more than stories. Numbers are clean. Numbers either add up or they don't. They do not wake up one day and decide facts are a matter of perspective. People do. My husband, Mason, was 32. We had been married for 9 years. We met at a friend's birthday party when I was 23 and he was 21, back when both of us still thought attraction and good intentions were enough to build something permanent. He was funny in a dry, underplayed way. Smart. Steady. He had this easy confidence that made rooms tilt toward him without him even trying. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Then we spent another year planning the wedding. 5 years before everything collapsed, we bought a house together. Nothing extravagant. A colonial in a decent neighborhood with trimmed hedges, a small back porch, and the kind of neighbors who actually waved when you pulled into the driveway. It was not some glamorous dream house. It was better than that. It was ours. For most of those 9 years, our life was solid in the way people stop romanticizing once they have it. Tuesday nights were takeout Chinese from the same place downtown. We ate straight from the cartons at the kitchen table and talked about work, traffic, bills, our plans for the weekend. Saturdays were grocery runs and laundry. Sundays were coffee on the porch and lazy arguments over whether we should clean the garage or pretend not to see it for another week. We were not exciting. We were real. And I thought real was enough. Looking back now, I can see the signs before I admitted them to myself. But marriage makes cowards of people in quiet ways. When you have built almost a decade with someone, you become talented at interpretation. You explain things away. You call distance stress. You call tension a phase. You call dishonesty confusion because the truth feels too expensive. The whole mess started about 4 weeks before everything finally exploded. Mason came home one Tuesday almost buzzing with energy, tossing his keys on the counter and grinning in a way I had not seen in a while. "I found this group online," he said. "It's actually incredible." I was unpacking takeout containers, steam fogging the kitchen window. "What kind of group?" He loosened his tie and leaned against the island. "A men's support circle, kind of like empowerment, I guess. Real conversations, accountability. Men helping men grow without being judged." At first it sounded harmless, healthy even. He called it the Columbus Men's Empowerment Circle. There were coffee meetups on Saturday mornings, discussion nights in the middle of the week, workshops about confidence, purpose, boundaries, becoming your strongest self. The language was a little polished, a little social media ready, but I did not think much of it. Everyone needs friends. Everyone needs community outside their marriage. I was not about to become the wife who resented her husband for having a life beyond the house. In the beginning, he came home energized. He talked about how refreshing it felt to be around men who understood what modern relationships do to a man. He said they challenged him to think differently, said they made him realize how much of himself he had been neglecting. I told him I was glad he found something meaningful. I meant it. Then the meetings started happening more often. Once a week became 3 times a week. 3 became 4. Wednesday discussions stretched to 11 at night, then midnight, then 2 in the morning on a work night. And somewhere in there, Mason's vocabulary changed. It was not just what he said, it was how he said it, like he had memorized lines written by someone who had never lived in our house. Suddenly, every question I asked was surveillance. Every concern I raised was emotional pressure. If I wanted to know why he was getting home at 2 in the morning, I was struggling with control. If I asked why he seemed angry all the time, I was resisting his growth. The man I married had always been direct, practical, sometimes stubborn, yes, but never theatrical. This was different. These were someone else's words in his mouth. And I started wondering whose. The leader of the group was a man named Simon, divorced at 27, never remarried. If his social media was any indication, he had turned his failed marriage into a personality brand. His feed was full of moody black and white photos, captions about reclaiming masculine power, quotes about refusing to be emotionally managed, long posts about knowing your worth and walking away from anyone who could not hold your frequency. Inspirational maybe, if you ignored the wreckage behind it. Then there was Jace, who had 2 children with 2 different women and seemed to spend most of his time online complaining that both mothers were bitter, unreasonable, and trying to ruin his peace. He posted gym selfies with captions about discipline and strength while publicly mocking the women who were still raising his children. And Wesley, who was on his 3rd engagement and always appeared to be launching some new business opportunity. Crypto 1 month, supplements the next, a life coaching program after that. He posted photos in rented cars and hotel lobbies with captions about building an empire, then asked friends for loans in the comments section when the newest venture stalled. Between the 3 of them, there were divorces, custody disputes, broken engagements, unpaid debts, online feuds, and enough instability to power a reality show. These were the men my husband had chosen as his life advisors. The irony was hard to miss. The first time I said so, Mason's reaction was instant, sharp, defensive, almost rehearsed. We were in the kitchen on a Tuesday, eating lo mein from cartons the way we always used to. The room smelled like soy sauce and sesame oil, and for one stupid second I thought maybe we could still have a normal conversation. I set my fork down gently. I'm not trying to tell you who to spend time with. I'm just asking why you need to be out 3 nights this week. He crossed his arms. Because I want to be. I looked at him. That's not an answer. It is an answer. His voice had that clipped, polished edge I was beginning to hate. These are my friends, Claire. They support me. They don't judge every choice I make. I almost laughed at the hypocrisy of him judging me while accusing me of judging him, but I held it back. I had already learned that pointing out contradictions only made him colder. So when I ask where you're going at 10 at night, I said carefully, that's me judging you? His face flushed. That's you trying to monitor me. I asked because you're driving home at 2 in the morning on dark roads. Stop dressing it up as concern when it's really about control. His chair scraped against the floor as he stood, and there it was again, that sense that he had come into the conversation prepared for a fight I had not started, like Simon or Jace or Wesley had already coached him through the scene. I stayed seated. Mason, I said quietly, you've been coming home late smelling like cologne that isn't yours and lying about where you've been. Maybe we should talk about what's actually happening. He went very still. Then his mouth hardened. Maybe, he said, his voice low and cold. I don't owe you explanations anymore. The refrigerator hummed behind us. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and then stopped. I stared at him, really stared. And what frightened me most was not anger. It was recognition. Something fundamental had shifted, and for the first time, I stopped telling myself it was temporary. All right, I said at last. He blinked, thrown off by my calm. You're right, I continued. Your friendships are your choice. Your decisions are your choice. I can't stop you from making them. His posture changed just slightly, like he had been bracing for impact and found empty air instead. Good, he said, finally. I rose and began gathering the cartons from the table. And since we're talking about choices, I said, carrying them to the sink, I have some of my own to make. That made him pause. I felt him watching me. What's that supposed to mean? I turned on the faucet and let the water run over my hands for a moment before answering. It means if you want complete independence in your choices, I get the same in mine. He followed me a few steps closer. Don't be dramatic. This is about friendship, not our marriage. I dried my hands slowly and turned to face him. Is it? Something flickered in his eyes then. Not guilt, not yet. Just caution. The first tiny crack. What are you planning? He asked. I held his gaze. Nothing dramatic, I said. Just making some personal choices of my own. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he looked away first. Maybe now, he muttered, you'll understand what independence actually means. I watched him grab his keys and head upstairs, already pulling out his phone. And I remember thinking, with a clarity that felt almost cruel, oh, I'm going to understand it. Just not the way you think. 3 days after that conversation, I stopped trying to fix anything. I stopped asking questions, stopped explaining myself, stopped hoping that if I just said the right thing in the right tone at the right moment, the man I married would somehow reappear. Instead, I started watching, really watching. There's a kind of quiet shift that happens when you stop being emotionally invested in someone's answers and start being interested in their patterns. It's the same part of my brain I use at work when numbers don't add up. You stop arguing with the data. You start collecting it. And once I started paying attention like that, everything became obvious. Mason was texting constantly, but never in front of me. His phone tilted away at angles that were too deliberate to be casual. He smiled at messages he didn't share. He left rooms to take calls that used to happen right in front of me. He wasn't just distant. He was redirecting himself toward something else, toward someone else. I didn't confront him. Not yet, because confrontation, I realized, only gave him time to adjust his story. Evidence didn't. So I did what I should have done sooner. I started digging. It took me less than 30 minutes to find the group online. The Columbus Men's Empowerment Circle had a semi-public presence, just enough access to draw people in, just enough visibility to make the members feel validated without realizing how much they were exposing. The feed was exactly what I expected. Gym selfies captioned, "Discipline over comfort." Photos at bars with hashtags like unapologetic, no compromises, becoming the man they can't control. Quotes about walking away from energy drains. But it wasn't the posts that mattered. It was the comments. Men cheering each other on for staying out all night. Laughing about wives who can't handle growth. Encouraging each other to explore options before settling again. It wasn't support. It was permission. Permission to drift. Permission to lie. Permission to rewrite commitment as weakness. And Mason was right in the middle of it, liking everything, commenting just enough to belong, adapting faster than I had realized. One post stopped me cold. It was from 2 Saturdays earlier. A group photo at some lounge downtown. Dim lighting, drinks on the table, bodies angled toward each other in that loose, careless way people have when they know they're being watched and want to look like they don't care. Mason was there, leaning slightly toward a woman I had never seen before. Her hand rested lightly on his arm. Not accidental, not distant, familiar. The caption read, "Best night in a long time, finally feeling like myself again." The timestamp was 1:57 a.m. That same night, he had come home at almost 3 in the morning and told me he had been at Simon's place watching a game. Said they lost track of time. Said it was nothing. I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I screenshotted it. Not because I was shocked, but because something inside me had finally stopped resisting what I was seeing. That night, when Mason came home, he looked lighter, almost relieved. Like someone who had stepped outside his life and found a version of himself he liked better. "How was your day?" I asked from the couch. "Great," he said easily, dropping his keys into the bowl. "We had lunch after work, planning something for the weekend." I didn't look up immediately. Planning what? He kicked off his shoes, stretching like he'd had the best day of his life. "Just a trip, nothing big, a reset." "A reset?" "Yeah," he said, smiling faintly. "Get away, clear my head, reconnect with myself." I let a beat pass. "Where?" "Cincinnati," he said. "There's a hotel with spa access, kind of a wellness thing. Workshops, meditation, all that. A wellness retreat, with men who couldn't maintain a stable relationship between them. At an adults-only hotel." My mind filed the information away neatly. "Sounds expensive," I said. He shrugged. "It is, but we all agreed we deserve it." We, not I. Not I need this. We. As if this group had become a unit more important than the life we had built together. He paused in the doorway, then looked back at me. "When's the last time you did something just for yourself, Claire?" he asked. "You're always thinking about the future, saving, planning, structuring everything. Sometimes you need to actually live." The question might have stung once. Now it just clarified things. "You're right," I said softly. "Maybe it's time I start investing in my own happiness too." He studied me for a second. Something in my tone must have registered. "What kind of investment?" he asked. I met his eyes. "Personal choices," I said. "I'm sure you understand." For a brief second, something like unease flickered across his face. Then it was gone. That night, after he fell asleep, I stepped out onto the back porch with my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Ethan, an old college friend, now a lawyer in Cleveland. He picked up on the third ring. "Claire, everything okay?" I leaned against the railing, looking out at the dark yard. "I need information," I said. "Hypothetically, how does divorce work in Ohio?" Silence, then a slow exhale. "This about Mason?" "Just information," I said. Another pause. "Ohio's a no-fault state," he said finally. "You don't have to prove anything, just that the marriage is broken. If it's uncontested, a few months. If it gets messy, longer." I let that sink in. "Do you know someone in Columbus?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Harold Sterling. He's good, especially if things turn ugly. You want his number?" "Yes." There was another pause. "You sure you want to go down this road?" Ethan asked quietly. "Once you start, it's hard to walk it back." I closed my eyes for a second. "I think I've already been on it longer than I wanted to admit." He didn't argue. "I'll text you his contact," he said. "And Claire?" "Yeah?" "Document everything." I looked back through the sliding glass door at the man sleeping inside. "Already did." Thursday evening, I gave him one last chance. Not as a test. Not as a trap. As a final confirmation. He came home earlier than usual, just after 6. For a moment, something in me almost softened. Maybe he had thought about our conversation. Maybe he had realized what was at risk. "Can we talk?" I asked. His shoulders stiffened immediately. "What about?" "Us." He set his keys down slowly. "I feel like we're disconnected," I said. "When did we stop being a team?" He let out a short laugh. "Maybe we were never a team," he said. "Maybe I was just following your lead the whole time." The words landed harder than I expected. Not because they were true, but because of how easily he said them. "Is there someone else?" I asked before I could stop myself. His head snapped up. "Why do women always go there?" he said sharply. "This isn't about replacing you. This is about me finding myself." "Then help me understand," I said. "Because from where I'm sitting, my husband is staying out until 2 in the morning, lying about where he is, and getting advice from men whose lives are falling apart. You don't know them." "I know what they post. I know their track record." His jaw tightened. "They understand me," he said. "They actually see me." Something inside me went very still. "They're using you," I said quietly. "They need you to validate their choices so they don't have to face them." His face flushed. "Get out." I blinked. "This is my house too." "Then I'm leaving." He grabbed his phone and walked upstairs. A second later, I heard his voice through the vents. Low. Urgent. She's starting to question things, he said. A pause. No, I didn't tell her anything. Another pause. Then, this weekend will be perfect. Perfect. For what? I didn't need him to answer. Friday afternoon, he came downstairs with a packed bag. New clothes. Expensive. Still tagged. And when he bent to zip it closed, I saw something else inside. New underwear. The kind he hadn't worn for me in months. I'm heading out after work, he said casually. Back Sunday night. I looked up from my coffee. You said I don't get a say, I replied evenly. I'm respecting that. He watched me carefully. You're really okay with this? I held his gaze. Have a good time, Mason. At 5 o'clock, a car pulled into the driveway. Simon in the driver's seat, Jace in the back. Wesley laughing at something already on his phone. Mason grabbed his bag. Didn't hesitate. Didn't look back. Didn't wave. 9 years. Closed like a door he assumed would still be there when he got back. I stood at the window and watched the car disappear down the street. Then I turned away. And for the first time in weeks, I moved. The moment the car disappeared around the corner, something inside me clicked into place. Not anger. Not grief. Clarity. The kind that strips everything down to decisions and removes the luxury of hesitation. I didn't sit. I didn't cry. I didn't replay the last 9 years looking for where things went wrong. I moved. First call was to Harold Sterling. He picked up on the second ring. Sterling. My name is Claire Bennett, I said, already walking toward the office. I was referred by Ethan Cole. I need an appointment as soon as possible. There was a pause, professional, assessing. What's the situation? My husband just left for a weekend trip with people he's been lying to me about. I have documentation. I want to file. Another pause. Monday morning, he said. 9 a.m. Bring everything. I will. I hung up before he could ask anything else. No small talk. No second guessing. Just the next step. Then I started documenting. Every room. Every surface. Every piece of furniture we had bought together. I walked through the house with my phone, taking photos like I was cataloging evidence after a crime scene, which, in a way, I was. The kitchen island where we used to eat. The couch where we fell asleep watching shows we barely paid attention to. The bedroom where distance had crept in long before either of us said it out loud. Timestamp everything. Create a record. That was how my mind worked. If it was documented, it existed. If it existed, it could not be rewritten later. Next came the paperwork. I pulled up our shared accounts, downloaded statements, insurance policies, tax records, mortgage details, organized them into folders labeled with dates, categories, clear headings. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I built a structure, a timeline, a version of the truth that didn't rely on anyone's memory or emotions. Then I opened a new account, transferred exactly half of our joint savings, $18,400. Not a dollar more, not a dollar less. Clean, fair, final. After that, I packed 2 suitcases, clothes I actually wore, toiletries, important documents, my laptop, the folder of screenshots, the life I could carry without asking permission. Everything else stayed. The furniture, the decorations, the wedding photos, objects that used to mean something and now felt like props in a version of my life that no longer existed. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself feel it. 9 years. Gone. Not in one dramatic collapse, but in a series of choices made slowly enough that I kept believing they could still be undone. Then I turned off the light, locked the door behind me, and left the key under the mat. The drive to Indianapolis took 3 hours. Dark highway. Country radio. Miles of empty road that gave my thoughts space to stretch out without interruption. I didn't cry. Not once. Because grief needs uncertainty to grow, and I didn't have any left. By the time I pulled into my younger sister Lena's driveway, it was almost 11. She opened the door before I even knocked. You look exhausted, she said, pulling me into a quick hug. I feel clear, I replied. She studied my face. That's not the same thing. No, I said, but it's better. Saturday morning, while Mason was presumably reconnecting with himself, I got confirmation. Not from him. From them. Jace posted a story. A short video at breakfast. Laughter. Glasses clinking. The kind of careless documentation people post when they think nothing can touch them. And there, in the background, Mason, sitting across from the same woman I had seen in the lounge photo, her hand resting on his knee. Close. Easy. Unquestioned. I didn't react. I screenshotted it, added it to the folder. 20 minutes later, the story was gone. Too late. Then Wesley posted a photo by the hotel pool. Bright sunlight. Too much skin. Too much proximity. Mason again. This time with his arm around her shoulders. The caption read, "No limits, no regrets." That one stayed up longer. An hour, maybe a little more. Before someone must have reminded him that Mason was still married. I forwarded both screenshots to Harold's email. Subject line: additional documentation. No explanation. None needed. Saturday afternoon, Lena and I drove around Indianapolis looking at apartments. Not seriously, just possibilities. A quiet one-bedroom with a balcony. A small loft downtown. A place near the canal with big windows and too much light. You thinking about staying here? Lena asked. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'll go back to Columbus. I haven't decided yet. She glanced at me. You're handling this really well. I looked out the window. I've had time to get used to it, I said. He just didn't know that. Sunday night, my phone lit up. Mason. Coming home late, long drive, don't wait up. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then typed back, take your time. A pause. Then another message from me. I'm not there anyway. His reply came almost instantly. What? Where are you? I didn't answer right away. Let the silence stretch. Then, made some personal choices. The phone rang. I let it ring. Again. Ignored. Third time. Voicemail. Claire, what is going on? His voice was tight, strained. Are you at Lena's? This isn't like you. Call me back. This isn't like you. Funny. I typed one more message. We'll talk Monday, after my meeting. Then I silenced my phone. 17 missed calls that night. I didn't listen to any of them. Monday morning, I sat across from Harold Sterling in his office. He was exactly what I expected. 50s. Silver hair. Calm in a way that suggested nothing surprised him anymore. I handed him the folder. Every screenshot. Every date. Every detail. He went through it methodically, page by page. No reaction. No commentary. Just quiet assessment. Finally, he looked up. This is thorough, he said. I wanted it to be clear, I replied. It is. He closed the folder. Ohio is no fault, he continued. Technically, you don't need any of this. But if he contests or tries to shift the narrative, this will protect you. Good. He nodded once. I can file today. Do it. One question, he added. How do you want him served? I didn't hesitate. At work. Harold's eyes flickered, just slightly. Understood. He made a note, then slid the folder back toward me. You're certain about this? I met his gaze. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. No room left for negotiation. Then we begin. Mason was served the next afternoon, at his office, in front of people who had no idea what version of him was about to fall apart. My phone started exploding within minutes. Calls. Texts. Voicemails. Claire, what are you doing? This is insane. We can talk about this. Please pick up. I didn't answer. Not one. Because the man who had told me I didn't get a say in his life had finally been forced to confront the one choice he didn't control. And for the first time, he understood what that actually meant. The first voicemail came in less than 5 minutes after he was served. By the 10th, his voice had changed. By the 20th, it was unrecognizable. I didn't listen to them right away. I didn't need to. I already knew the pattern. Shock, anger, denial, then the shift. The moment where consequences stop being theoretical and start becoming real. That's when regret shows up. Not before. Never before. By the time I finally played one, late that night, sitting on Lena's couch with the lights off, his voice was breaking. Claire, please, this is too much. You didn't even talk to me. You just filed? 9 years and you don't even give me a conversation? I stared at the dark screen of my phone. 9 years. He said it like a number that should outweigh everything else. Like time alone should have been enough to protect us from what he had already done. I didn't call him back. The next day, the calls changed direction. If he couldn't reach me, he would reach around me. His sister called. Ignored. His friend from work. Ignored. Then his mother. I hesitated for half a second before answering. Claire? Her voice came through, tight with concern. What's going on? Mason is... He's a mess. He said you filed for divorce out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. I almost smiled. Did he tell you about Cincinnati? I asked calmly. Silence. Then, no, she said slowly. What about Cincinnati? Did he tell you about the woman in the hotel pool? Or the breakfast where her hand was on his knee? Or the post his friends deleted 20 minutes after they went up? The silence stretched longer this time. Heavy. Real. No, she said again, softer. I didn't think so. Claire. Her voice wavered. There has to be some kind of misunderstanding. There isn't. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't rush. Didn't need to. I have everything documented, I continued. Dates, times, photos, messages. He knows that now. Another long pause. Then quieter. I'll talk to him. That's between you and him, I said. I'm done explaining. I hung up before she could say anything else. 2 days later, I got a text from her. I've seen the photos. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. Because apologies, I had learned, often come too late to matter. Thursday afternoon, Mason tried a different approach. He showed up at my office. Security called me upstairs. "Ma'am," the receptionist said carefully, "there's a man here asking for you. He says he's your husband." I looked at the glass wall in front of me, my reflection faint against the city beyond it. "I'm not available," I said. "He's insisting." "Then he can insist somewhere else." A pause. "He's crying." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. "Ask him to leave," I said. "If he refuses, call the police." 10 minutes later, she called back. "He's gone." "Good." Friday morning, he escalated. He showed up at Lena's apartment. I was in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Lena checked the camera feed, then looked back at me. "It's him." For a second, something in my chest tightened. Not love. Not even longing. Just recognition. This was the man I had built a life with. And now he was standing outside like a stranger who didn't understand why the door wouldn't open. "Don't let him in," I said. Lena nodded and cracked the door just enough to speak. "He doesn't want to see you," she said flatly. "I just need 5 minutes," Mason's voice came through, raw and uneven. "Please, just tell her I'm here." "He knows." "Claire," he called, louder now. "I know you can hear me. Please, just talk to me." I stayed where I was. Didn't move. Didn't answer. Because 5 minutes would turn into 10. 10 into an hour. And somewhere in that hour, he would try to rewrite what had already happened. Lena didn't give him the chance. "She said no," she replied. "You need to leave." "This is my marriage," he snapped. "You don't get to interfere." Lena didn't flinch. "She already ended it," she said. "You got served. That's how it works." Silence. Then, quieter. She didn't mean it. Lena's voice hardened. "You should have thought about that in Cincinnati." That landed. I could hear it in the way his breathing changed, in the way the silence stretched too long. "He told you?" Mason asked. "He showed me." Another silence. Then, that was taken out of context. "Of course it was," Lena said. "Everything always is." There was a shift outside. Footsteps. Then nothing. For a moment, I thought he had left. He hadn't. He sat on the front steps. For 2 hours. I watched from the window. Not hiding. Not avoiding. Just observing. He cycled through everything. Crying. Pacing. Calling someone. Probably Simon, probably Jace. His voice sharp. Defensive. Unraveling. At one point, he just sat there, staring at the door, like he could will it open. Like if he waited long enough, the version of me he expected would come back and let him in. She didn't. After 2 hours, Lena called the non-emergency line. An officer came. Spoke to him quietly. Firmly. Eventually, he left. That night, I got a message. "I can't believe you had the police called on me." I read it once, then typed back. "I can't believe you showed up uninvited after what you did." A pause. Then one more line from me. "We're even." He didn't respond. The next few weeks blurred together, not because they were chaotic, because they were structured, controlled. I found a condo in Columbus. Small, modern, clean, half the size of the house we had shared. But every inch of it was mine. I picked the furniture, the colors, the layout. No compromises. No negotiations. No quiet resentments hidden in shared decisions. Work became steady again. Predictable. My boss noticed the situation but didn't pry. Just gave me more to focus on. More responsibility. More direction. And for the first time in months, I realized something strange. Without the constant emotional noise, I was sharper. More present. More myself. Meanwhile, Mason's world started to crack. At first it was subtle. Missed calls. Shorter messages. A shift in tone. Then it accelerated. His manager reached out to me 2 weeks after I filed. "Claire," he said carefully, "I know this might not be appropriate, but Mason's performance has dropped significantly. He's missed multiple days. He broke down in a meeting yesterday." I listened, then said the only thing that was true. "That's not my responsibility anymore." A pause. "I understand," he said. "I just thought you should know." "I appreciate it," I replied, "but it doesn't change anything." And it didn't. Because whatever was happening to him now, he had chosen the path that led there. A week later, I heard he had been put on a performance plan. 2 weeks after that, he quit. Walked out in the middle of the day. No notice. No explanation. Just gone. And then, almost like something inevitable finally triggering, the group started to fall apart. Not all at once, but fast enough that even from a distance I could see it unraveling. The same men who had told each other they were untouchable were about to learn otherwise. Collapse never announces itself. It starts as cracks. Small ones. Dismissible ones. The kind people step over because acknowledging them would mean admitting everything they built is already unstable. Then one day the structure just gives way, and everyone inside it realizes, too late, that there was never anything solid holding it up. That's what happened to Mason's empowerment circle. It started with Simon, the man who built his entire identity around teaching other men how to take control of their lives. Turns out control is a fragile thing when it depends on secrecy. The woman Mason had been spending time with in Cincinnati? She wasn't just some random connection. She was part of Simon's inner circle. And more importantly, she wasn't unattached. Her fiancé found the messages. All of them. Screenshots, photos, plans, promises that were never meant to survive outside a private thread. He didn't confront quietly. He didn't process. He exposed everything. Tagged names, shared timelines, connected faces to actions. Simon's carefully curated persona didn't survive the week. Clients dropped him. His programs disappeared. The same followers who had once reposted his quotes suddenly pretended they had never heard of him. His last post before his account went dark was one sentence. Sometimes growth means being misunderstood. No, sometimes it means being revealed. Jace fell next. Both of the mothers of his children, women he had spent years publicly mocking, finally compared notes, compared screenshots, compared weekends, compared the stories he told each of them about where he was and who he was with. The inconsistencies lined up too perfectly to ignore. Within weeks, both of them filed for custody adjustments. And this time, they came prepared. His social media became evidence. Every late-night post, every video, every caption about living free while his children were somewhere else. Every public insult. Every reckless decision he had proudly documented. It all turned into a timeline, a pattern, a case. He lost primary custody of both kids within 2 months. Supervised visitation. Twice a week. The kind of outcome that doesn't happen suddenly. It happens when someone finally stops ignoring what's been obvious for years. Wesley didn't even make it that far. His third engagement collapsed almost instantly. His fiancée found the debt. All of it. Credit cards. Loans. Inventory from yet another failed business, stacked in a storage unit he thought she'd never check. She didn't argue. Didn't negotiate. She ended it. Took back everything she legally could. And left him with exactly what he had built. Nothing. His engagement ring showed up online a few days later. Priced low. No buyers. The group didn't disband officially. There was no announcement. No statement. No final message about lessons learned or paths diverging. It just disappeared. Group chat gone. Pages deleted. Connections severed. The same men who had called each other brothers stopped answering each other's calls. Because loyalty built on mutual delusion doesn't survive reality. Mason held on longer than the rest. Not because he was stronger, because he had more to lose. And for the first time, he could see it. He asked to meet about a month after I filed. I agreed. Not because I needed closure, but because I wanted everything finished clean. We met at a coffee shop in Westerville. Neutral ground. Public. Controlled. He was already there when I walked in. 15 minutes early. That alone told me everything. Mason had never been early for anything unless it mattered. And now, it mattered. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. The confidence he used to carry so effortlessly was gone, replaced with something heavier, something uncertain. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. I nodded once. What do you need? Straight to the point. No space for nostalgia. No room for emotional detours. He swallowed. I fired my attorney, he said. I'm not fighting anything. You can have whatever you want. I leaned back slightly. I don't want everything, I said. I want fair. He nodded quickly. Then fair, whatever you decide. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, just final. Simon's done, he said after a moment. Jace lost his kids. Wesley's... I don't even know where he is now. I didn't respond, because none of that surprised me. Everything just fell apart, he continued, his voice quieter now. All of it. Yes, I said calmly. That tends to happen. He looked at me then. Really looked. I threw everything away, he said. For nothing. There it was. Not understanding. Not growth. Just the recognition of loss. For people who did not care about me, he added. For a situation I can barely even explain now. You didn't throw it away for nothing, I said. He blinked. I held his gaze. You threw it away for the feeling of being free from consequences. His shoulders dropped. Because that was the truth he couldn't reframe. I know, he said. Good. Maybe the lesson would stay. He rubbed his hands together, like he didn't know what to do with them. What happens now? He asked. Now, I said, standing. The lawyers finish what we started. And us? I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, because I wanted him to hear it clearly. There is no us, I said. There hasn't been for a while. I turned, walked out, didn't look back. 3 months after I filed, we stood in a courtroom. 11 minutes. That's how long it took to end 9 years. The judge reviewed the documents, signed the papers. The marriage is hereby dissolved. Just like that. Done. Outside, Mason tried one last time. Claire, wait. I stopped. Turned slightly. Can we at least be friends someday? I considered it for a second. Not emotionally. Logically. Maybe, I said, but not now. Not for a long time. 6 months later, my life didn't look anything like it used to. The condo was fully furnished. Not decorated. Chosen. Every piece intentional. Every corner quiet in a way that felt like peace, not emptiness. I cooked again. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I built routines that didn't depend on anyone else's choices. Mornings that started without tension. Evenings that ended without questions. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. Sometimes people think stories like this end with revenge, with some dramatic moment where everything evens out. It doesn't. Not really. Because the truth is, consequences don't need help. They arrive on their own, quietly, inevitably, exactly where they're meant to. The last time I saw Mason was outside that courthouse, standing still, watching me walk away. And for the first time, he didn't try to stop me. My name is Vanessa Chen. I'm 39 years old. And 8 months ago, my entire life was burned to the ground because I tried to protect my brother from the wrong woman. If you think that sounds dramatic, trust me. I used to think the same way about stories like this. Until it happened to me. I live alone. Not because I can't be in a relationship, but because I choose not to. There's a difference. I've seen enough chaos, enough emotional landmines, enough people pretending to be something they're not, only to explode the moment you trust them. So I opted out. My life is simple. I work as a data analyst. I go to the gym. I come home. I cook. I sleep. No drama. No games. No one testing my boundaries just to see how far they can push before I break. And I liked it that way. My younger brother, Daniel Chen, is the exact opposite. He's 34. Brilliant. Soft-hearted. The kind of man who believes in people even after they've given him every reason not to. He'd been through hell already. His ex-wife left him years ago, chasing a career across the country and leaving him with full custody of their 2 kids, Lily and Noah. He stepped up, worked himself into the ground, built something from nothing. And then, everything changed. His startup got acquired by Microsoft. Overnight, Daniel went from surviving to untouchable. We're talking life-changing money. The kind that makes people look at you differently. The kind that attracts attention. The wrong kind of attention. I remember the first time he told me. We were sitting at dinner. He was practically vibrating with excitement. I don't have to worry anymore, Vanessa, he said, smiling like a kid. The kids are set. I'm set. I smiled back. I was happy for him. I really was. But there was this quiet unease sitting in the back of my mind. Because I've seen what money does. It doesn't just change your life. It changes the people around you. It started small. New clothes. A car that cost more than my entire apartment. A penthouse downtown with glass walls and a view that didn't feel real. I didn't judge him. He earned it. But I noticed something else. The shift. The way people started orbiting him. Friends who hadn't called in years suddenly checking in. Distant relatives popping up with, just wanted to reconnect. And then she appeared. Her name was Sophia. At least, that's what she told us. She came into Daniel's life about 6 months after the buyout. Said she was a freelance photographer. Said she was between places while working on her portfolio. Said a lot of things. All of them. Just vague enough to sound believable. The first time I saw her, I knew. Not logically. Not with proof. Just instinct. She walked into the room like she already owned it. Perfect hair. Perfect makeup. Perfect smile. The kind of beauty that didn't feel natural. It felt constructed. Intentional. Her eyes scanned everything. Not in curiosity. In assessment. Vanessa, she said, extending her hand. Daniel talks about you all the time. Her voice was warm. Too warm. Like a performance. I shook her hand. Smiled politely. And felt something cold settle in my chest. Because I've seen women like her before. Not loud. Not obvious. Not messy. The dangerous ones never are. They don't demand. They suggest. They don't take. They guide you into giving. And Daniel? He didn't stand a chance. Within 2 weeks, she moved in. 2 weeks. Her excuse? Her lease fell through unexpectedly. Temporary. Just until she figured things out. Funny thing, though. For a photographer, she didn't have a camera. No equipment. No editing setup. Nothing. When I asked her about her work, she smiled. Oh, I focus more on lifestyle branding, she said lightly. It's not really about the gear. Translation? Nothing concrete. Nothing verifiable. But no one else questioned it. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not anyone. They loved her. Absolutely adored her. She's so elegant, my mom said. So much class, my sister added. Such a perfect match for Daniel. I sat there at family dinners, watching her. Listening. Not to what she said, but to how she said it. Little things. The way she casually mentioned expensive restaurants she used to go to. The way she sighed about missing her old BMW. The way she dropped stories about friends whose boyfriends bought them jewelry just because. Never asking. Just planting ideas. And Daniel? He absorbed all of it like it was normal. Like it was expected. The moment that sealed it for me happened on Christmas. We were all gathered in the living room. Laughter. Music. Kids running around. Normal. Safe. Until I saw her. Sitting slightly apart. Phone in hand. Focused. I walked past her casually and caught a glimpse of the screen. Daniel Chen net worth Microsoft buyout. She didn't even try to hide it. Our eyes met for half a second. Then she smiled. Switched apps. Like nothing happened. That was the moment I knew. Not suspected. Knew. This woman wasn't here for Daniel. She was here for what Daniel had. And the worst part? I was the only one who could see it. I tried warning him. More than once. She moved in after 2 weeks, I told him one night. She doesn't work. She doesn't contribute. Doesn't that bother you? He laughed. Actually laughed. You don't understand her, he said. She's been through a lot. She just needs time. Time. That word again. The excuse people use when they don't want to face reality. She's different, he added. She gets me. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And realized something that made my stomach twist. He wasn't listening to me. Not really. Because he didn't want the truth. He wanted the feelings she gave him. And feelings, they make people blind. So I stopped pushing. Stepped back. Watched. Because sometimes you can't stop someone from walking into a fire. All you can do is be there when everything burns down. I just didn't realize how much of that fire would end up consuming me too. After New Year's, Sophia stopped pretending to move slowly. Up until then, she'd played the long game. Soft voice, delicate smile, elegant little laughs at the right moments. She knew exactly how to make people feel flattered in her presence. My mother started setting an extra place for her at dinner without even asking if she was coming. My sister sent her links to boutique stores like they'd known each other for years. Even my father, who usually distrusted everyone on site, started calling her that sweet girl. That part almost impressed me. Almost. Because what Sophia did wasn't luck. It was strategy. She studied rooms, measured people, adjusted herself accordingly. Around my mother, she was respectful and warm. Around my father, she was soft-spoken and admiring. Around my sister, she was stylish and teasing. Around Daniel, she became whatever version of comfort he needed most. That was the thing about her. She never felt real. She felt custom-made. And custom-made people are dangerous because they're never loving you. They're building access. By February, the requests started getting harder to miss. At first, they came wrapped in tiny inconveniences. She needed keys to Daniel's penthouse just in case. She needed access to his Amazon account because she was ordering supplies for work. She asked whether he could add her to the parking app because her life would be so much easier. Always small, always reasonable, always framed like convenience instead of control. And Daniel kept saying yes. One yes at a time, 1 inch at a time. That's how people get trapped. Not in one massive decision. In 1,000 little ones that feel too harmless to question. Then came the money. Not directly. Sophia was too smart for direct. She'd mention a car repair with this disappointed little sigh, then fall silent long enough for Daniel to offer help. She'd bring up a family problem over dinner, then look embarrassed, as if she hated even talking about it. One night she said, "My mother would never ask anyone for help, even when she's drowning. That's just how she is." Daniel looked up immediately. What happened? Sophia hesitated. Perfectly. The mortgage is behind. It's nothing. I shouldn't even be talking about this. That was her favorite move. Open the door, then act too dignified to walk through it. Make someone else do it for her. What do they need? Daniel asked. And just like that, she had him. I was sitting right there when it happened. I watched her lower her eyes, watched the sadness settle into her face like a rehearsed expression. And I knew she'd done this before. Not maybe, not probably. Before. The amount she mentioned later was almost funny in how precise it was. It matched a number Daniel had brought up a few days earlier about a quarterly payout. She was listening, collecting, matching her emergencies to his liquidity. That wasn't desperation. That was targeting. When I tried to bring it up to him again, he got defensive faster than before. We were at the gym, just the two of us, and I waited until he'd finished a set before I said anything. She times her problems around your money, I told him. He sat up, grabbed his water bottle, and frowned at me. You really can't let this go, can you? No, I said, because she keeps proving me right. She's under pressure. She's convenient under pressure, I shot back. That's different. He slammed the bottle down harder than he meant to. You don't know what happens between us. I stared at him. That's exactly what worries me. His jaw tightened. For a second, I saw the brother I grew up with, the one who used to trust me, the one who used to read my face and know when I was serious. Then it was gone, replaced by pride, by stubbornness, by that humiliating look people get when they sense they're being fooled but aren't ready to admit it. "She loves me," he said quietly. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because he wasn't saying it to convince me. He was saying it to keep himself from falling apart. So I backed off again. But I started paying closer attention. I noticed how Sophia never had stories with details. No old friends with names. No messy memories from college. No embarrassing family anecdotes. Nothing textured. Nothing that pinned her to a real life before Daniel. When someone asked about her photography, she pivoted. Fast. Always. "What kind of work do you do exactly?" my aunt asked at one family lunch. Sophia smiled over her wine glass. "Oh, it changes all the time. Lately, I've been more inspired by Daniel's vision and everything he's building." Daniel's vision? That almost made me laugh out loud. My brother wrote code, managed acquisitions, and binge-watched documentaries in sweatpants. But Sophia said it like he was some misunderstood genius artist whose soul only she could recognize. And he loved hearing it. Because after his divorce, after being left with 2 kids and a broken ego, praise hit him like medicine. He didn't just want affection. He wanted restoration. Sophia knew that. She knew exactly which parts of him still hurt. And she stroked every bruise until he mistook manipulation for healing. Then came the New Year's party. Daniel threw it at the penthouse. Big crowd. At least 50 people. Investors, old friends, neighbors. A few cousins, people from his company. Music too loud. Champagne everywhere. City lights stretched behind the windows like the whole skyline had shown up to watch him celebrate. Sophia moved through that room like she'd trained for it. One hand on Daniel's arm. One smile for every guest. She made sure people saw her beside him. Not trailing. Not blending in. Placed. Claimed. Presented. And she was good. Dangerously good. Then she cornered me near the bar. "Vanessa," she said brightly, stepping close enough that anyone watching would think we were having a warm private conversation. "Daniel says you've always been very protective of him." Her fingertips brushed my arm as if we were close. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. "I try to be." Her smile widened. "That's sweet." Sweet. The word landed wrong. Like sugar over poison. She leaned in slightly. "I think there may have been some misunderstandings about me." I kept my voice flat. "I don't misunderstand much." For the first time, something flickered behind her eyes. Cold. Fast. Then it was gone. "I love Daniel," she said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." There it was. Not a confession. A declaration. A territorial flag planted in the middle of the room. "Good to know," I said. "I really hope we can become friends," she continued. "It would be unfortunate if Daniel ever felt caught between the 2 most important women in his life." Most people wouldn't have heard it. They would have smiled, maybe even called it mature. But I heard the threat sitting under every word. Cooperate, or be isolated. I held her gaze and said, "Anyone who makes my brother choose has already made herself clear." That was the first moment her smile truly slipped. Just a little. Barely visible. But I saw it. And she saw that I saw it. After that, the air between us changed. No more pretending. Not really. Now we were just 2 women standing on opposite sides of a truth only one of us was willing to say out loud. I watched her more carefully after that. And once I started really watching, it all became obvious. She monitored his mood before bringing things up. She never asked for money on good days. Only on days when he was tired, guilty, emotional, or distracted. She used Lily and Noah too. Not directly, but strategically. She'd praise him as a father, then sigh about how hard it must be to do everything alone. She'd mention how much stability children need, then slide into a conversation about why shared accounts made practical sense. She even floated the idea that if he really cared about long-term security, he should think about helping her parents. "For family," she said at dinner one night, gently touching his wrist. "That's what people do when they're building something real." My mother nearly melted in her chair. "That's such a beautiful way to think," she said. I looked at Daniel. He didn't answer right away. For the first time, he looked uncomfortable. Only for a second. But it was there, and Sophia noticed it too. Her fingers withdrew from his wrist almost instantly. Her expression shifted into concern. Not pressure. Never pressure. Concern. "You know what? Forget I said anything," she murmured. "I never want you to feel used." That was the brilliance of her. She could create the pressure and then position herself as the one relieving it. By spring, Daniel finally started seeing cracks. He came to my apartment one evening without warning. He looked exhausted. Not just tired. Deflated. Like someone had let the air out of him. I opened the door and stepped aside. He walked in, sat down heavily at my kitchen table, and scrubbed both hands over his face. "I think I messed up," he said. I didn't answer right away. I put a glass of water in front of him and waited. He stared at it. She says she's broke, he said finally. But she spends constantly. I stayed quiet. She buys skincare that costs more than my car payment. Gets coffee every morning from that stupid boutique place downstairs. Nails every week. Clothes, dinners, gifts. He looked up at me. And when I asked to see her portfolio, she got angry. There was no satisfaction in hearing that. None. Because the way he said it, small, embarrassed, wounded, made him sound younger than he was, like a man standing in the wreckage of his own hope. What did she say? I asked. That I was controlling. He laughed once, bitterly. That real artists don't perform on command for insecure men. I leaned back in my chair. And I don't think she's a photographer. The words sat between us. Heavy. Humiliating. True. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to attack him, or mock him, or say I told you so. I didn't. I just said, what are you going to do? He swallowed. I'm going to ask her everything. Money, work, her past, all of it. I nodded slowly. Then I said the only thing that mattered. Be careful. He frowned. Careful of what? I looked him straight in the eye. People who build their lives on lies don't break quietly when the truth shows up. He gave me a tired smile, like I was being dramatic. I remember that smile. I remember it because 48 hours later, I would replay it in my mind and wish I had done more. Wish I had stopped him. Wish I had understood what Sophia was really capable of. Because when Daniel confronted her, she didn't just panic. She adapted. First came tears, then outrage, then trembling little speeches about trust and betrayal. And when none of that worked, when Daniel held firm and demanded proof, she changed tactics. She turned to me. She told him I had been trying to destroy their relationship from the beginning, that I was obsessed with controlling him, that I had said disturbing things, that I had made her uncomfortable, that I had crossed lines. Daniel called me after he threw her out. His voice was shaking. She's gone, he said. I changed the locks, cut off her cards, told her not to come back. I stood in my kitchen, gripping the phone so hard my hand hurt. Good. There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, I should have listened to you. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to say it, wanted to let the bitterness have its moment. But all I said was, just focus on the kids. He exhaled like he was relieved I hadn't punished him. She said terrible things about you, he murmured. I didn't believe her. Not in the end. Not in the end. At the time, I took comfort in that. At the time, I thought the worst was over. I thought the parasite had been cut off. I thought Daniel had finally woken up. I thought we would spend a few awkward months cleaning up the emotional mess she left behind, and then life would move on. I had no idea Sophia wasn't leaving empty-handed. I had no idea she'd already decided that if she couldn't keep Daniel, she would take something from him anyway. And what she chose to take was me. 3 days after Daniel threw Sophia out, someone knocked on my door. It was early. Too early for visitors. Too early for anything normal. I opened the door, expecting a delivery. Instead, I found 2 investigators standing there, and a police officer behind them. Vanessa Chen, one of them asked. My stomach dropped. Yes? We need to speak with you regarding some very serious allegations. There are moments in life where everything slows down, where your brain tries to catch up to something your instincts already know is wrong. This was one of them. What kind of allegations? I asked. The investigator didn't soften it, didn't ease into it, didn't prepare me. Inappropriate conduct involving minors. For a second, I didn't understand the words. Not really. Then they hit. Hard. What? I whispered. We've received detailed reports concerning your interactions with Daniel Chen's children. My ears rang. My chest tightened so fast I thought I might actually pass out. That's not possible, I said immediately. That's not... Who filed this? Anonymous report, 3 days ago. 3 days. Exactly 3 days after Daniel ended things with Sophia. I felt something inside me go cold. Those allegations are false, I said louder now. Completely false. You'll have the opportunity to clarify that, the officer said, but we need you to come with us for questioning. I didn't resist. Didn't argue, because arguing would make it worse. That's how this works. So I grabbed my jacket, locked my door, and walked out into the hallway while my neighbors peeked through cracked doors. Watching, judging, already deciding. At the station, they sat me in a small room with no windows. Metal table, 2 chairs, 1 camera in the corner. Then they started reading. Every accusation, every detail, every fabricated moment. Inappropriate touching during family gatherings. Private conversations with the children. Providing gifts to encourage secrecy. The words felt unreal, like they were describing someone else. Some monster I didn't recognize. This is insane, I said. I barely spend time with them. I help with homework sometimes. We play video games. That's it. They kept writing. Faces neutral. Voices calm. Because to them, this wasn't shocking. It was routine. That's when I understood something that made my hands shake. It didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter what I'd actually done. All that mattered was what had been reported. And the report was detailed. Too detailed. This wasn't random. This was constructed. Then they said something that broke something inside me completely. Your brother has filed a supporting statement. I froze. What? Daniel Chen has submitted a formal report expressing concern for his children's safety. No, that wasn't right. That's not possible, I said. He wouldn't. He knows me. The investigator didn't respond. Didn't need to, because the paperwork was already in front of them. Signed. Real. My own brother. The same man who had called me 2 nights ago, apologizing. The same man who said he should have listened to me. Now sitting somewhere else, telling the police I might be a danger to his children. I stopped talking after that, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I realized no one in that room was actually listening. To them, I wasn't Vanessa. I wasn't a sister. I wasn't a daughter. I was a case. And cases don't get the benefit of the doubt. They get processed. After hours of questioning, they let me go. Pending further investigation, they said. That phrase would follow me for the next 9 months. When I got home, they were already there. Another team. Search warrant in hand. They went through everything. My laptop, my phone, my files, my drawers. I stood there in my own apartment, watching strangers tear through my life like it belonged to someone else. And outside, my neighbors watched, again. But this time, they didn't look curious. They looked afraid. That's when the calls started. First, my boss. Vanessa, we need you to come in immediately. Then my father. What the hell is going on? Then my mother. I picked up her call, hoping, stupidly, that she would listen, that she would know me, that she would trust me. I didn't even get one full sentence out. This is a misunderstanding, I started. Maybe if you had stayed out of Daniel's relationship, she snapped, cutting me off. None of this would have happened. I went still. Mom, I am ashamed of you, she said, each word sharp. Precise. Final. Ashamed. Not confused. Not concerned. Ashamed. I didn't do anything, I said quietly. But she wasn't listening. Stay away from this family until you fix whatever this is, she said. And don't call me again. Then she hung up. I stood there with the phone still in my hand. And for the first time since the police showed up, I felt something worse than fear. Not anger. Not panic. Betrayal. Because strangers thinking the worst of you, that's expected. But your own family? Choosing the worst version of you without even asking for your side? That's something else entirely. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No noise. No distractions, just silence, and the slow, crushing realization that my life, as I knew it, was over. Within 48 hours, I was suspended from work, placed under investigation, restricted from being anywhere near schools, parks, or children. Me, a woman who avoided kids most of the time because I didn't have the patience for them, now labeled a potential threat to them. I had to move out of my apartment. There was a school too close. Try explaining that to a landlord. Try finding a new place when background checks show active investigation involving minors. I ended up in a tiny studio. Cash payments, month to month. No questions asked. That's where my life collapsed into something unrecognizable. I lost my job within a week. No severance, no discussion, just policy. Zero tolerance, HR said. I tried applying elsewhere. Didn't matter. Everyone had heard. Because things like this spread fast. And they don't come with context. They come with labels. Dangerous. Predator. Monster. My sister blocked my number. Extended family disappeared. No one wanted to be associated with me. And Daniel played his role perfectly. The protective father. The man forced to make impossible decisions. I have to think about my children first, he told people. And just like that, he became the victim. And I became the threat. Even though, deep down, he knew exactly where this came from. Sophia. The woman he had just exposed. The woman who had lied to him. Manipulated him, used him, and now destroyed me. I lay awake that night in that cheap studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, and one thought kept repeating in my mind, over and over and over again. She didn't just want revenge, she wanted annihilation. And the worst part? It was working. The first week felt like a blur. The second week felt like a nightmare. By the third, it stopped feeling temporary. It became my life. Everything moved fast at first. Too fast. They seized every device I owned. Laptop, phone, external drives, even old backup disks I hadn't touched in years. Then came the interviews. Neighbors, coworkers, anyone who had ever been in the same room as me. I started noticing the looks, the hesitation, the subtle shift in how people spoke to me, like I might suddenly become something dangerous, like I already was. That's the thing about accusations like this. They don't need proof. They just need possibility. And once that possibility exists, it stains everything. I hired a lawyer, criminal defense, specialized in cases like mine. $45,000 up front. I didn't hesitate. Because this wasn't about money anymore. This was about survival. During our first meeting, she laid it out for me. No sugarcoating. No comfort. If they push this to trial and win, she said, flipping through documents, you're looking at 15 to 30 years. I stared at her. I didn't do anything. I believe you, she said calmly. But belief doesn't win cases. Evidence does. That sentence stayed with me because it meant something terrifying. The truth wasn't enough. We had to prove it. And proving you didn't do something, that's one of the hardest things in the world. The months dragged. Slow, heavy, endless. I couldn't work, couldn't rebuild, couldn't move forward. Every day felt like waiting for a verdict that hadn't come yet. I stopped answering unknown numbers, stopped checking messages, stopped looking people in the eye when I passed them on the street, because I could feel it. The judgment. Parents pulling their kids closer when I walked by. Neighbors suddenly too busy to say hello. One woman called the police on me for loitering near a playground. I was walking to the grocery store. That's when I stopped going out unless I absolutely had to. Isolation wasn't a choice anymore. It was protection. The only person who didn't change was Ethan. We'd been friends since college. He knew me before any of this. Knew who I actually was. When I called him that first week, barely able to speak, he didn't hesitate. This is revenge, he said immediately. That woman went nuclear. I let out a shaky breath. You don't know that for sure. I do, he said, because I know you, and I know you'd rather leave a room full of screaming kids than spend 5 minutes with them. Despite everything, I almost laughed. You're not wrong. I'm never wrong about you, he said, and you're not going through this alone. He proved it. Groceries when I couldn't face the store. Late night calls when my thoughts got too loud. Sitting with me in silence when there was nothing left to say. He never once asked, what if it's true? Not once. That mattered more than anything. Meanwhile, the case built itself around me. Sophia became their star witness. She testified multiple times, each version of her story more detailed than the last. Carefully crafted, emotionally delivered, just believable enough. She cried at the right moments, paused at the right places, spoke like someone carrying a burden instead of someone creating one. The prosecutors loved her. To them, she was brave, concerned, protective. To me, she was a ghost haunting every corner of my life. Daniel stayed silent publicly, but his actions said everything. He sat in court, supported the narrative, let them build a case around me. And every time I saw him, he looked away, like eye contact might force him to confront something he didn't want to admit. The kids, Lily and Noah, they were interviewed multiple times. Specialists, psychologists, and they told the truth. They said I helped with homework, played games, talked to them like a normal aunt. Nothing inappropriate, nothing strange, nothing. That should have been enough. It wasn't. Because the absence of evidence doesn't always mean innocence. Sometimes, they twist it into proof of manipulation. They might be protecting her, one report suggested. I remember reading that and feeling something inside me crack. Even the truth wasn't safe. By month 6, I stopped sleeping properly. Every night, I replayed everything. Every interaction. Every conversation. Trying to find something, anything, that could be twisted into what they were accusing me of. And finding nothing didn't help. Because nothing wasn't proof. It was just nothing. By month 7, I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. In my lawyer's office, she slid a document across the table. A plea deal, she said. 7 years. Reduced charges. You'd likely serve 4 with good behavior, she added. I stared at the paper. 7 years versus a possible 30. This isn't an admission of guilt, she said. It's a strategy. A strategy. To survive. To cut losses. To accept a version of reality that wasn't true. Because the real one might destroy me completely. I sat there for a long time, thinking, calculating, weighing 4 years of my life versus the risk of losing everything. And for a moment, I considered it. That's what this kind of pressure does. It doesn't just test your innocence. It tests how much you're willing to suffer to prove it. What stopped me wasn't logic. It wasn't hope. It was rage. Pure, burning, unforgiving rage. At Sophia, at Daniel, at my family, at the fact that I was even sitting there having to choose between prison and surrender. I didn't do anything, I said again. My lawyer nodded slowly. Then we keep fighting. So we did. We dug deeper, subpoenaed records, tracked timelines, pulled everything we could. And then, after 9 months of hell, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Vanessa, my lawyer said. Her voice was different, sharp, focused. We found something. I sat up slowly. What kind of something? A pause. Then, everything. My heart started pounding. Investigators accessed her digital history. I didn't breathe. And Vanessa, she said carefully, she didn't just lie. She planned it. I closed my eyes. And for the first time in 9 months, I felt something shift. Not relief. Not yet, but something close. The beginning of the truth. Finally, fighting back. I didn't celebrate when the charges were dropped. There was no relief-filled breakdown. No tears. No laughter. No phone calls. Just silence. My lawyer called the next morning. All charges are being dismissed, she said. Immediately. Permanently. I sat on the edge of my bed. Phone pressed to my ear. Say that again, I whispered. They've concluded the accusations were fabricated, malicious. There's no case. 9 months. 9 months of my life reduced to one sentence. No case. I hung up and just sat there. You would think that's the moment everything comes back. That life resets. That the nightmare ends. It doesn't, because the damage doesn't disappear just because the truth shows up late. It stays, like smoke in your lungs long after the fire's been put out. I tried going back to my old job. They were polite, professional, careful, but the answer was no. Your position has already been filled, HR said. Translation? Too risky. Other companies weren't any better. Background checks still showed the investigation. No one cared that it had been dismissed, because in their eyes, investigated was close enough to guilty. It took 8 more months to find work again. Smaller company, lower pay, starting over at 39 like I hadn't spent 2 decades building anything. But the job wasn't the hardest part. It was Daniel. He came to see me, showed up at my door like nothing had happened, holding guilt like it was something he could set down and walk away from. I didn't know what to believe, he said. I stared at him. You knew exactly what she was capable of, I replied. He flinched. I had to protect my kids. There it was, the justification, the excuse, the same line he'd been hiding behind for months. You didn't protect them, I said quietly. You protected yourself. He shook his head. That's not fair. No, I said. What you did to me wasn't fair. Silence stretched between us. Then he tried something else. The kids miss you. That one hit hard, because I missed them too, more than I wanted to admit. But I didn't let it show. Then why can't I see them? I asked. He hesitated. My girlfriend. She's not comfortable with it yet. I let out a slow breath. Of course. Even now, even after everything, I was still the risk, still the question mark, still the stain no one wanted too close. We're done, I said. His face went pale. Vanessa, no, I cut him off. Some things don't get fixed. This is one of them. He stood there for a long moment, like he was waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, he left. And that was the last real conversation we ever had. My parents tried reaching out later. Not directly. Through relatives. Through suggestions. Through quiet messages about family healing. I ignored all of it. Because healing requires truth. And they chose comfort instead. But Sophia? Sophia thought she got away clean. New city. New life. Probably already lining up her next target. She was wrong. I wasn't done. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about consequences. So I hired another lawyer. Civil litigation. Defamation. Emotional distress. Malicious abuse of process. Another $25,000 up front. Worth every cent. Because this time, the burden of proof was different. I didn't need to prove innocence beyond doubt. I just needed to prove she lied. And I had everything. Her browser history. Searches like a step-by-step manual. How to file CPS reports. How to make accusations stick. How to remove someone from a family legally. Text messages. Conversations with her roommate. Once he cuts me off, I'll make sure his sister disappears. That line alone was enough to make my hands shake when I first read it. Then the timeline. She filed the report exactly 72 hours after Daniel ended things. Not during the 8 months she lived with him. Not while she was around the kids every day. Only when the money stopped. Only when she lost access. The case took 18 months. Long. Exhausting. Relentless. She fought it. Of course she did. Claimed she believed everything she said. Claimed she was protecting children. But lies don't hold up under pressure. And hers collapsed. Piece by piece. Contradictions. Inconsistencies. Fabrications layered on top of each other until the whole story broke under its own weight. The final blow came from her roommate. Under oath, she admitted everything. The plan. The intention. The pride Sophia had taken in how perfect it was. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The judge didn't hold back. Calculated. Malicious. Deliberate. Every word felt like a correction to everything that had been said about me. The final number? $850,000. More than double what we asked for. But here's the truth no one tells you. Winning doesn't fix anything because she didn't have the money. So we took it another way. Wage garnishment, 25% of everything she earns. Every month, for years. Liens on future assets. Restrictions on credit. Permanent record. She tried to escape it. Bankruptcy. Relocation. Didn't matter. This kind of debt doesn't disappear. It follows. Just like what she did to me. And every time she gets paid, a portion of that check reminds her. Of me. Of what she tried to destroy. Of what she failed to erase. People tell me I should move on. That I should let it go. That holding on to this makes me bitter. They're not wrong. It did change me. I trust less. Expect less. Believe less. But I also see clearer. I don't ignore red flags anymore. I don't assume good intentions. And I don't forgive people who prove exactly who they are. Daniel still sends messages sometimes. Holiday cards. Short texts. Hope you're doing well. We should talk someday. I never respond. Because some doors don't get reopened. And some people don't get a second version of you. But every night, when I go to sleep, I know one thing for sure. The truth came out. And she pays for it. Every single month. My name is Vivian Mercer. I'm 58 years old. I spent 26 years in internal affairs before retiring 15 months ago. And retirement, I've learned, is just a prettier word for worrying without a badge on. I still wake before dawn. I still keep files stacked on my desk. I still listen for trouble, even when the house is silent. Especially when the house is silent. I live alone now. Quiet street, quiet kitchen, quiet routines. My phone almost never rings after midnight. That night, I had already been awake, reading through procurement audit notes for a consulting job some county administrator had practically begged me to take. The lamp on my desk cast that same tired yellow light over everything. My tea had gone cold. The clock said 2:53. Sorry. Then my daughter called me and sounded like she was trying not to break in half. "Where are you?" I asked, already standing. "Hillside Station." I reached for my boots. "Evan hit me," she whispered. Then he called 911 and told them I attacked him. The room went still. My daughter, Chloe Brennan, 35, steady job, steady habits, the kind of woman who always apologized when other people stepped on her foot, took in a shaking breath. "They arrested me, Mom. They didn't even look at me. They took his side." I was pulling my coat on before she finished. "Don't say another word to anyone," I told her. "Not one word. Not to an officer. Not to a sergeant. Not to him. I'm on my way." The drive should have taken 12 minutes. It took 9. Every red light felt personal. Domestic disturbance calls are some of the ugliest scenes law enforcement walks into, because too often the decision gets made before the facts are even gathered. Man says he's scared. Woman gets questioned. Woman says she's scared. Man gets cuffed. Procedure becomes instinct. Instinct becomes assumption. Assumption becomes a report that follows you into court. I had investigated enough botched domestic violence responses to know how badly a single lazy decision could ruin a life. Hillside Station sat on 5th and Maple, the same old brick building it had been for decades. The same peeling trim. The same fluorescent misery bleeding through the front windows. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee, printer toner, and neglect. The desk officer looked up from his screen. Young. Mid-20s, still carrying the stiff, alert posture of someone who hadn't yet learned how much of policing was paperwork and exhaustion. His name tag read Officer Patterson. Vest still on, probably doubling front desk and patrol because the night shift was short again. "I'm here for Chloe Brennan." He barely looked at me at first. "Family or legal?" "Family," I said, "and I know the process." His fingers paused over the keyboard. "Your name?" "Vivian Mercer." The color left his face so quickly it was almost theatrical. He stood so fast his chair banged against the wall. "Ma'am, I'll get Sergeant Morrison right now." Then he was gone. I stood there with my briefcase in one hand and my anger held low and tight in my throat, watching him disappear down the hallway. Recognition wasn't unusual. In my line of work, old names tended to linger where people least wanted them remembered. But that reaction? That was fear. Sergeant Morrison appeared less than half a minute later. Broad shoulders, steel gray hair pulled back so severely it looked painful. Mid-50s, the kind of face life carved with responsibility instead of softness. I recognized her immediately, and the memory came with a bitter taste. Westbrook Precinct. Years ago, she'd been a patrol supervisor there when I exposed 8 officers involved in a protection racket with local businesses. 2 went to prison. Several lost their badges. Morrison had survived it, but not gracefully. She looked at me now like she had just swallowed broken glass. "Ms. Mercer," she said. She did not offer her hand. "I wasn't aware Chloe Brennan was your daughter." "Different last names make things simpler," I said. "I need to see her, now." Morrison gave one tight nod. "This way." The holding area looked exactly the way every holding area in every underfunded station looked. Sickly fluorescent light, scuffed tile, too cold, too loud in all the wrong ways. Even silence buzzed there. Chloe was sitting in an interview room with a styrofoam cup between both hands, like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. The second I saw her face, something cold and vicious unfurled inside me. Her left eye was swelling dark and fast. A bruise had already started deepening along her cheekbone. There were red scratches across her neck. Not random ones either. Curved, angry marks. Defensive wounds. Close contact wounds. She looked up when I entered. Relief hit her first, then shame, and that nearly made me angrier than the bruises. "I didn't do anything," she said. "I know." I sat across from her and set my briefcase down carefully, because if I moved too fast right then, I might have broken something. "Start from the beginning." It came out in pieces. Evan had been volatile for months. Suspicious. Accusatory. Picking fights over nothing, then over everything. Convinced Chloe was cheating on him with a coworker named Marcus. There was no affair. Marcus was 63 years old, married, and treated Chloe like a niece. Most of their messages were about shipment schedules, delivery delays, and which Thai place near the warehouse had the least disappointing noodles after 8 p.m. But Evan had built a fantasy and fed it until it started breathing. "Tonight he was already angry when I got home," Chloe said, staring into the cup. "He kept asking where I'd been, who I was texting, why Marcus stayed late last week. I told him he was being ridiculous, and then he just—" She swallowed. He picked up the lamp. I didn't interrupt. He swung it at me, at my head. I put my arm up and tried to get back. He came at me again, and I shoved him away, and then he started yelling that I was proving his point. He grabbed my wrist. I scratched him trying to get loose. Her voice thinned. Then he stopped. That word sat between us. Stopped. People think violence is always loud, but some of the most dangerous moments come when it suddenly isn't. He just stopped, she said again, quieter now. Like somebody flipped a switch. He looked at me, went into the bedroom, and called 911. What exactly did he say when he called? I didn't hear all of it. Just pieces. That I attacked him. That he was afraid. That I'd been getting worse. I felt my jaw tighten. When officers arrived, did they separate you? No. Did they photograph your injuries? She shook her head. They looked at him first. He was crying, saying he didn't know what I'd do next. Then they asked if he felt safe staying there. He said no. Her mouth trembled. That was it. That was enough. I made notes. Every detail mattered now. Every second. Every failure. A knock landed against the doorframe. Morrison. "Ms. Mercer," she said, expression carefully neutral. "Can we speak privately?" I stood, but before I left, I put one hand on Chloe's shoulder. "You did the right thing calling me." Her eyes filled immediately, and she looked away. That told me everything I needed to know about how alone she'd felt before I got there. In the hallway, Morrison folded her arms. "Your daughter's boyfriend claims she became aggressive when he confronted her about suspected infidelity," she said. "He says she shoved him, threatened him, and escalated physically. He has visible scratches. My daughter has a swelling eye, bruising, and claw marks on her neck." I kept my voice calm. "Were those photographed before you arrested her?" Morrison's silence lasted half a beat too long. Officer Patterson made the arrest decision based on the call and the complainant's statement. So he arrested someone without fully documenting both parties' injuries, without separating them for independent interviews, and without considering that the 911 caller might be lying. Her jaw tightened. "What exactly are you asking for, Ms. Mercer?" I looked her dead in the eye. "For now, I'm asking for the truth to catch up with your paperwork before this becomes something your department regrets." Morrison held my gaze for a long second, the way people do when they're trying to decide whether they're dealing with a difficult parent or a problem that could end careers. Then she said, "What do you want?" "I want my daughter photographed properly. I want every visible injury documented with timestamps and chain of custody. I want the 911 recording preserved. I want body cam footage from both responding officers locked down before anything gets overwritten. And I want Chloe re-interviewed by someone who knows the difference between panic and performance." Morrison's expression hardened. "You're not here in any official capacity." "No," I said. "I'm here as a mother who spent 26 years watching bad police work turn into courtroom disasters." That landed. Because the thing about truth is that it doesn't always win quickly. but it does make people nervous when you say it calmly. Morrison glanced back toward the bullpen, then lowered her voice. Give me an hour. I said nothing. She added, Your daughter is being released pending further review. Good. Not good enough, but good enough for that moment. When I went back into the interview room, Chloe looked up so fast it made my chest ache. Well, they're releasing you. Her shoulders sagged, but it wasn't relief. Not fully. It was the collapse that comes after adrenaline decides it's done carrying you. You're coming home with me, I said. What about Evan? The question came out so softly it almost didn't sound like words. I stared at her. What about him? She blinked hard. He's not okay, Mom. There it was. The loyalty. The reflex to protect the person who had just humiliated her, hurt her, and handed her to the system like a package he wanted removed from the house. I had seen that look on victims before. I had seen intelligent people twist themselves into knots, trying to explain cruelty in terms gentle enough to survive it. Chloe, I said quietly, he hit you with a lamp. I know. He called 911 before you could. I know. He used the system first because he knew whoever spoke first would control the frame. Her lips trembled. I know. I sat down across from her again. Then stop talking about him like he's the one I need to worry about tonight. Her eyes filled. She looked down at her hands. We've been together 5 years, she whispered. I kept thinking if I just stayed calm enough, if I stopped defending myself so hard, if I found the right way to explain things. That's the trap, I said. She looked up. The trap is making you believe there was a correct way to be treated better. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she covered her mouth and cried silently, the way grown women do when they've learned noise only makes people more uncomfortable, never kinder. I let her cry. I didn't touch her this time, didn't interrupt, didn't offer one of those empty phrases people give because they can't stand the sight of pain they can't fix. After a minute, Morrison returned with a woman I didn't recognize. Late 40s, sharp posture, dark blazer under her department jacket. No wasted movement. Detective Lena Reeves, Morrison said. She'll be taking over follow-up. I'd heard the name. Good investigator. Methodical. Not flashy. The kind of detective who irritated lazy people because she actually read reports before signing them. Reeves nodded once at me, then turned to Chloe. I'm going to photograph your injuries and take a full statement, she said. I need you to walk me through everything exactly as it happened, even if you've already said it once. Especially if you've already said it once. That was the first thing anyone in that building had said all night that sounded like policing instead of damage control. Chloe looked at me. I gave her one small nod. Tell the truth, I said. And don't edit yourself to make him look better. Reeves took her to processing. Morrison led me toward a small evidence review room with a wall-mounted monitor and a tablet docked beside it. You can review the 911 call and available body cam footage here under supervision, she said. No copies leave the building tonight. I expected as much. But you may take notes. She left me with the tablet and closed the door. The room smelled like plastic and old paper. There was a hum in the overhead vent and a coffee stain on the table that looked older than some rookies' careers. I opened my notebook. Then I pressed play. The 911 recording started with breathing. Fast, shaky, but not uncontrolled. Then Evan's voice. High enough to sound frightened. Controlled enough to sound useful. My girlfriend attacked me, he said. She grabbed me aggressively. She's been escalating for weeks, and I'm afraid for my safety. I stopped the playback. Rewound. Played it again. Escalating for weeks. Afraid for my safety. Grabbed me aggressively. I felt something inside me go cold and precise. Those weren't impossible phrases for a frightened person to use. People say all kinds of things in crisis, but panic language is usually messy, repetitive, personal. It stumbles over itself. This didn't stumble. This was calibrated. It sounded like someone had studied which words got a man treated like a victim fast. I wrote the phrasing down exactly. Then I opened Officer Patterson's body cam. The footage started outside the house at 11:37 p.m. Front porch light on, door already open. Evan standing there in a gray t-shirt and socks, eyes wet, one cheek red, scratch marks visible along his forearm. He looked shaken. Not devastated, not terrified. Shaken in a way I'd seen before on people performing distress just hard enough to be believed. Sir, step back for me, Patterson said. Evan did. I need help, he said. She lost it. She came at me. Patterson asked a few questions, but not enough of the right ones. Not, did she use a weapon? Not, where is she now? Not, are there visible injuries on both parties? Instead, he kept returning to emotional framing. Do you feel safe right now? Yes. Has she done this before? She's been getting worse. There it was again. Language that builds a pattern before evidence confirms one. The camera moved inside. Chloe was sitting on the couch with one hand against her face. Even through the grain of body cam footage, I could see the swelling already forming around her left eye. A ceramic lamp lay tipped sideways near the coffee table. One of its metal edges was smeared dark. Blood, maybe. Hard to tell from the footage. "She attacked me first," Chloe said immediately. "Please look at my face." But Patterson barely turned toward her before saying, "Ma'am, stand up." No full scene assessment. No immediate separation. No independent statements. No photography. Just a decision arriving before the facts had a chance to. Then another officer, Ramirez, moved into frame and took over talking to Chloe while Patterson stayed closer to Evan. I watched the next several minutes twice, then 3 times. Certain things started bothering me. Evan never once looked at Chloe directly. Not when she denied it. Not when she asked them to look at her injuries. Not even when they handcuffed her. He kept his eyes lowered or fixed on the officers. Not on her, not on the wreckage, not on the room where this supposed terrifying outburst had just happened. That can mean many things. Shame, manipulation, preparation, sometimes all 3. I kept taking notes. 11:37 arrival, 11:38 verbal contact with complainant, 11:39 entry, 11:41 cuffs. Too fast. Far too fast for a case that already showed contradictory physical evidence. By the time Reeves came to get me, I had 7 pages of notes and a headache building behind my eyes. "Your daughter's statement is consistent," she said. And her injuries track better with defensive behavior than primary aggression. I nodded once. "What about him?" "Still interviewing." "Can I observe?" She studied me for a second. "You know I shouldn't say yes." "You also know I'm asking because what he says next matters." A beat passed. Then she said, "Observation room. No interference. No commentary. No knocking on the glass like this is television." That almost earned a smile from me. Almost. The observation room was dim, one-way glass, separating us from the interview room below. Evan sat at the table alone when I first saw him, shoulders hunched, hands clasped tight enough to whiten the knuckles. He had always been handsome in the vague, forgettable way some men are. Tall enough to look reassuring in photographs. Soft brown hair, pleasant mouth, the kind of face that made older women call him polite and younger women call him safe. Tonight, he looked exactly like what he wanted to look like. A man who had survived a frightening woman. Reeves entered, carrying a legal pad and a bottle of water she set in front of him without ceremony. "Mr. Hale," she said, sitting across from him, "walk me through the evening." He inhaled shakily. "I got home around 6:45. Chloe was already there, which was unusual lately because she's been staying late all the time." He rubbed his hands together. "I asked her how work was. She got weird, distant, defensive." "What do you mean by defensive?" "She snapped at me, told me I was always suspicious, that I made everything ugly." Reeves wrote something down. "What happened next?" He looked at the table first, then up with carefully timed wetness in his eyes. "I told her I'd seen messages from Marcus, inside jokes, late nights. She laughed at me." "What exactly did she say?" A pause. Then, "She said I was pathetic, paranoid, that if I couldn't handle the truth, that was my problem." I felt my jaw set. No, Chloe wouldn't use pathetic that way. She hated words that cornered people. Even when she was angry, she went vague instead of cruel. It was one of the things that made manipulators love her. Reeves kept her tone flat. "Then what?" "She stood up fast. Got in my face. I told her to back off. She shoved me. I grabbed her wrist to stop her, and then she just..." He swallowed. "She exploded, started scratching, hitting, screaming." "Did you hit her?" "No." "Did you swing anything at her?" "No." "Did she strike you with an object?" He hesitated. "Just enough." "No." That tiny delay rang louder than a confession. Reeves noticed it too. I could tell by the way her pen stopped moving for half a second. "She has significant swelling around her eye," Reeves said. "Can you explain that?" Evan's voice softened, became almost fragile. "I think maybe when she was flailing, maybe I elbowed her by accident trying to get away. I don't know. It happened so fast." Convenient. Always convenient when the injuries are undeniable. He kept going. "I didn't want her arrested. I just wanted help. I just wanted someone to see what I've been living with." That line was smoother than the rest. Prepared in advance. Not rehearsed enough to sound scripted, but polished enough to sound practiced. Reeves questioned him for another 20 minutes. He stayed steady. No big contradictions. No dramatic collapse. He positioned himself carefully. Frightened but fair. Wounded but still compassionate. Betrayed but not vindictive. A good liar doesn't overplay. A good liar knows restraint is more persuasive than rage. When Reeves finally stepped into the observation room with me, she closed the door softly behind her. "Well?" I asked. She tucked the pen behind one ear. "He's better at this than your daughter." I let that sit. "You believe her?" "I believe," Reeves said slowly, "that he's had practice being believed." There was the first real crack. Not in the case, in him. I looked back through the glass. Evan was sitting alone now, staring at his folded hands, expression blank the second he thought nobody was studying him. Mask slip in empty rooms. That's one of the oldest truths I know. Reeves leaned against the wall. "There's something else," she said. "What?" She told me he's accused her of cheating for months. Multiple times a week, sometimes more. With Marcus. Yes. I exhaled through my nose. Marcus is 63, married, and more interested in shipping invoices than adultery. That's what she said. And if you pull their messages? I already requested them. Good. I glanced at her. If his story keeps holding on wording, but not on evidence, he's going to need the scene to do more work for him than it can. Reeves said nothing for a second. Then, "You think he planned the language?" "I think frightened people improvise. He sounds like he studied." She didn't disagree. That mattered. Chloe was released a little after 5:30 in the morning, pending further review. Subject to ongoing investigation. The kind of bureaucratic wording departments use when they realize they move too fast and want room to reverse without admitting they should have known better. I signed what needed signing. Reeves handed me a card. Morrison avoided my eyes. When Chloe and I stepped outside, dawn was beginning to smear pale blue along the horizon. The air had that sharp, damp chill that belongs to mornings when nobody has slept, and the world still expects you to continue anyway. Chloe moved like her bones hurt. Maybe they did. I opened the passenger door for her. She stopped before getting in and looked back once at the station. Not with anger. With disbelief. That was worse. On the drive home, she fell asleep against the window before we hit Maple. I kept both hands tight on the wheel and let the silence sit between us. Because underneath my anger, underneath the procedural failures and the narrowing instinct that this whole thing had been engineered, something else had started to bloom. A quieter fear. The kind that arrives when you realize the first lie worked. And people who get rewarded for the first lie rarely stop at one. By the time I got home, I knew two things with absolute certainty. Evan wasn't done, and neither was I. Chloe slept for almost 12 hours. Not peacefully. She drifted in and out, caught somewhere between exhaustion and whatever her body was still trying to process. Every time I checked on her, she had shifted positions, curled tighter, then stretched out, then curled again, like her system couldn't decide if it was safe yet. I didn't wake her. I went to my office instead, closed the door, and started building the timeline. Every case, no matter how messy, emotional, or personal, becomes manageable the second you reduce it to sequence. Who did what? When? With what evidence? With what gaps? Especially the gaps. I spread my notes across the desk. The 911 phrasing, the body cam timestamps, the missing photographs, the failure to separate, the speed of the arrest. Then I wrote one line across the top of a clean page. What doesn't fit? That's where truth hides. It was nearly noon when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. "This is Vivian Mercer." A man's voice came through, tight and already irritated. "You're Chloe's mother?" "Who's asking?" "Daniel Hale, Evan's brother." "Of course. There's always someone who steps in early, trying to control the narrative before it hardens." "I'm listening," I said. He didn't waste time. "Your daughter needs to stop this." "Interesting." Not, "we need to talk." Not, "let's figure out what happened." "Stop this. She attacked my brother," he continued. He's shaken up, embarrassed, and frankly trying to keep this from turning into something bigger than it needs to be. I leaned back in my chair. "Then he shouldn't have called the police." Silence, then sharper. He called because he was scared. He called because he knew what would happen when he used the right words. Another pause. "You think you're clever," Daniel said, "but you don't understand the situation. Evan's willing to let this go if Chloe takes responsibility, admits what she did, apologizes. We all move on." There it was. The offer. Confess to something you didn't do, and we'll be generous. My pen tapped once against the desk. "So your brother is willing to withdraw his claims, if my daughter validates them." "You're twisting this." "No," I said calmly. "I'm clarifying it." His tone shifted, losing patience. "Look, Ms. Mercer, I know who you are." "Of course you do." "Then you know threats are a bad strategy," I said. "I'm not threatening you." "Good." A beat, then quieter, colder. "But people talk. Reputations shift. Old cases get re-examined. You made a lot of enemies in your career. It wouldn't take much for someone to start asking questions." There it was. Not a threat. An implication. The kind cowards prefer because they think it gives them deniability. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. You done? You should think carefully about how hard you push this, Daniel added, because if this gets ugly, it won't just be my brother dealing with the fallout. I pressed one button on my phone. Voice recording. Then I said, listen carefully. He didn't respond. You just told me your brother is willing to drop his claim if my daughter confesses. You implied consequences if we don't comply. And you attempted to leverage my past work to intimidate me. Silence. You don't contact me again, I continued, still calm. You don't contact my daughter. You don't contact anyone connected to this case. If you do, I document it and forward it to the detective assigned. His breathing changed. That was the first real reaction. You're overreacting. No, I said. I'm preparing. He hung up. I saved the recording immediately, then backed it up twice, then sent a copy to Detective Reeves with a short message. Possible witness intimidation. Related party. Recording attached. She called me within 10 minutes. That was fast, I said. I was already looking at your case file, she replied, and now I'm definitely not bored. Thought you might appreciate the added context. You realize, Reeves said, this just widened things. I was counting on it. A pause. You think Evan's acting alone? She asked. No, I said. I think he's the one in the spotlight, not necessarily the one pulling every string. She didn't disagree. Good, she said, because I've got something for you. I leaned forward. Phone records. That got my attention. Walk me through it. Evan called Chloe 59 times this week, Reeves said. 31 of those calls were after midnight. I closed my eyes briefly. Harassment pattern. Classic escalation behavior. Texts? I asked. Worse, she said. Accusations, demands, location tracking, repeated claims she was cheating, and a few messages that cross into threats. Define threats. You'll regret lying to me. Don't make me prove what I know. That kind of language. I wrote it down. What about coworkers? I spoke to 2, Reeves continued. Both confirm he's been showing up at her workplace unexpectedly. Confrontational. One described him as watching her more than talking to her. My jaw tightened. And Marcus? She actually let out a short breath that almost sounded like disbelief. 63, married, baffled. Their messages are about shipment delays and lunch orders. So the affair doesn't exist. Not even close. I leaned back again. Then he needed one. Reeves went quiet for a second. Explain that. He built a narrative first, I said, then looked for evidence to support it. When he couldn't find any, he escalated until he could manufacture the conditions to make it believable. You're saying last night was inevitable. I'm saying it was prepared. Another pause. Then, there's more. I felt something tighten in my chest. Body cam, she said. What about it? There's a gap. I sat up straighter. How long? 1 minute. Exactly. Exactly long enough. Timestamp? I asked. 11:39 to 11:40, she said. Right after entry, before cuffs. I didn't say anything for a second. Then, that's not a glitch. That was my first thought, Reeves said, but I wanted to hear yours. It's too clean, I said. Glitches don't respect narrative timing. She let out a quiet breath. I've requested server copies. If anything's been altered, we'll know. Someone already knew what mattered, I said. That's why it's gone. Reeves didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice had shifted. Not alarmed, but sharpened. Then we're not just dealing with a bad call. No, I said. We're dealing with someone who understands how the system reacts. I hung up a few minutes later. Then I just sat there, listening to the house, to the quiet, to the low hum of everything that hadn't broken yet. Because cases like this don't explode all at once. They build, layer by layer, lie by lie, until suddenly there's too much weight on one side and everything collapses. I heard Chloe moving down the hallway around 2 in the afternoon. Slow steps. Careful, like she was testing the floor. When she appeared in the doorway of my office, her hair was still tangled from sleep, and the bruise on her face had darkened into something uglier, more permanent looking. Hey, she said. Hey! She leaned against the doorframe. Did anything happen? I studied her for a second. Then I said yes. Her shoulders stiffened. Good or bad? Both. That got her attention. She stepped inside. I turned the notebook toward her. Your boyfriend called your brother, I said. My what? His brother called me, I corrected. Offered a deal. Admit you attacked Evan, and this all goes away. Her face went white. He wouldn't. He did. She sank into the chair across from me. Chloe, I said gently, look at me. She did. This is no longer about a fight that got out of control. Her throat moved. Then what is it? I held her gaze. This is about someone building a case against you. The words landed. Slow. Heavy. Irreversible. She stared at me like she was trying to find a version of reality where that wasn't true. There wasn't one. What do we do? She whispered. I closed the notebook. We stop reacting, I said. And we start proving. Outside, somewhere down the street, a car door slammed. Normal life continuing. Unaware. Uninvolved. Inside my office, the shape of what we were dealing with finally became clear. Not chaos. Not misunderstanding. Strategy. And the worst part? People who plan like that don't stop when the first move works. They escalate. By Thursday morning, the case had stopped feeling like a domestic dispute and started feeling like a structure. Not chaos. Not emotion. A structure built out of pressure, timing, and control. And structures like that don't collapse on their own. They have to be forced. The first crack came from somewhere we didn't expect. Jennifer Kemp, one of Chloe's coworkers. The one who had told Detective Reeves she'd seen Evan lose his temper in the break room weeks earlier. Loud, aggressive, throwing a stapler hard enough to dent the wall behind Chloe. She called Reeves, then backed out. I'm not comfortable testifying, she said. No explanation. No elaboration. Just fear wrapped in polite language. Reeves called me within minutes. She's folding. Why? I asked. She won't say. I didn't answer right away, because I already knew the answer. She was approached, I said. That's my assumption. Not assumption, I corrected quietly. Pattern. A pause. You want to push it? Reeves asked. Yes. You realize that puts her under pressure. She's already under pressure, I said. The question is whether it stays hidden or gets documented. That landed. I'll flag it, Reeves said, and we'll move to deposition if necessary. Do it. 6 hours later, I had confirmation. Not from Reeves. From someone else. Mitchell Torres, former colleague, private investigator now, still had contacts where it mattered, and more importantly, still knew how to listen without being seen listening. He showed up at her house, Mitchell said. Who? Evan's brother, Daniel Hale. Of course. How long? About 20 minutes. Neighbors saw him go in, saw him leave, said she looked shaken after. Any recording? No. Witnesses? Just eyes from across the street. I leaned back in my chair. Then it's intimidation without proof. Smells like it, Mitchell said. But you push this, it escalates. It's already escalating, I replied. A beat. Then Mitchell sighed. Yeah, he said, it is. The deposition was scheduled fast. Court doesn't like the word intimidation, especially when it's whispered instead of shouted. Jennifer showed up pale, hands trembling, eyes moving like she was expecting someone to interrupt the room at any second. Peter, my attorney, kept his tone steady. Ms. Kemp, has anyone contacted you regarding your testimony? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Who? Daniel Hale. There it was. Clean. On record. What did he say? Her voice dropped. He told me I should think carefully about getting involved, that people who accuse his family tend to regret it. Did he threaten you directly? No, she whispered. Not directly. But you understood the implication? Yes. Peter let that sit. Are you still afraid? She swallowed. Yes. A pause. Then something shifted in her expression. Not confidence. Not strength. But something closer to decision. But I'm more afraid of lying under oath, she added. Good. Very good. Is your original statement true? Peter asked. She nodded, more firmly this time. Yes. Evan threw the stapler. He was angry. He wanted to scare her. That testimony went straight into the case file. And just like that, one piece of the structure cracked. But people like Evan don't stop when cracks appear. They reinforce, or they overcorrect. And overcorrection is where mistakes live. Sunday afternoon, the call came. Dispatch. Ms. Mercer, this is Officer Santos from Hillside PD. We're at your daughter's residence responding to a disturbance. Your presence is requested. My grip tightened on the phone. What kind of disturbance? Property damage. The complainant states someone broke in and destroyed the interior. She's identifying Chloe Brennan as the suspect. I closed my eyes. Of course she is. We'll be there in 15 minutes, I said. The house looked wrong the second we pulled up. 3 patrol cars. Front door open. Movement inside. And Evan standing on the lawn, arms crossed, talking fast to an officer like he needed the story to land before the facts did. Chloe went still beside me. I haven't been here, she said. I know. We stepped out of the car. Officer Santos met us halfway. Ms. Mercer, Chloe, your boyfriend claims the house was vandalized while he was out. Says he returned from grocery shopping and found it like this. Chloe blinked. What? I've been with my mom all day, she said. I understand, Santos said. We're documenting everything. I looked past him into the house, and what I saw told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't random. It wasn't chaotic. It was deliberate. The television was smashed, but the expensive sound system beside it was untouched. Clothes were shredded, but only Chloe's. Framed photos were broken, but only the ones with her in them. Targeted. Selective. Narrative-driven destruction. Not theft. Not rage. A message. Or worse, evidence. Has anything been taken? I asked. Santos shook his head. No valuables missing. Of course not. Because that would complicate the story. Receipts? I asked. For what? For his grocery trip, I said calmly. Time-stamped. Santos glanced back toward Evan. Not yet. Then I'd suggest you get them, I said. And I'd suggest you check surveillance from surrounding houses before anything else gets moved. He nodded slowly. Already in progress. Good. At least someone in that department was learning. 3 hours later, the story unraveled. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But piece by piece. Like it always does when someone lies too much. Reeves arrived halfway through the investigation and took over questioning Evan. I watched from the edge of the room as his composure started to slip. Just slightly. Every time his timeline got challenged. How long were you at the store? About an hour. Which store? Market Way on 8th. What time did you leave? Around 2. What time did you return? 3-ish. Do you have a receipt? I think so. He was reaching now. Reeves let him. Then she pulled Santos aside. Neighbor across the street has a camera, she said quietly. Shows him leaving the house at 2:15. With groceries? Yes. And returning? 3:30. I felt something settle into place. He went back inside before calling 911, I said. Reeves nodded. 45 minutes. Plenty of time. More than enough. To do this, I finished. Reeves looked at me. Looks that way. We searched the kitchen trash. Found the receipt. Dated yesterday. He hadn't even bought the groceries today. He'd staged the alibi. Badly. Desperation makes people sloppy. By the time Reeves finished questioning him, Evan was no longer calm. Not fully. His voice was tighter. Movements sharper. Eyes flicking too often. The mask wasn't gone, but it was cracking. And when people like him start cracking, they don't retreat. They double down. We left the house just after 8. The sky was already dark again. Chloe sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. She's not going to stop, is she? She said quietly. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth matters, especially when it hurts. No, I said finally. She's not. Silence filled the car. Heavy. Final. What if she does something worse? Chloe asked. I glanced at her. She will. Her breath hitched. And we'll document it, I continued, every time, until the pattern is undeniable. She closed her eyes. And for the first time since this started, she didn't defend him. Didn't explain him. Didn't soften him. That mattered more than anything else that day. Because truth doesn't just live in evidence. It lives in the moment someone stops trying to protect the lie. Back at home, I sat in my office long after Chloe went to bed, reviewing, rebuilding, reinforcing. The structure was collapsing now. I could see it. But collapsing structures are dangerous. They don't fall clean. They take things with them on the way down. And something in my gut told me we weren't at the bottom yet. Not even close. Monday morning felt like the kind of day where something ends. Not cleanly, not gently, but decisively. The courtroom was already half full when we arrived. Low voices, shuffling papers. That quiet tension that lives in spaces where people pretend everything is procedural when it's anything but. Chloe sat beside me, hands folded too tightly in her lap. The bruise on her face had started to yellow at the edges, but it was still there, still visible, still undeniable. Across the room, Evan sat with his attorney. Calm again. Of course he was. Courtrooms reward composure. They punish emotion. And Evan had always been good at choosing which version of himself to present. Judge Walsh entered without ceremony. Late 50s, controlled, efficient. The kind of judge who had seen every variation of human behavior and stopped being surprised by any of them. Let's begin. Evan's attorney stood first. He built the narrative exactly the way I expected. Concerned boyfriend. Escalating partner. Fear. Unpredictability. A request for protection. It was clean. Structured. Convincing if you didn't look too closely. Then Peter stood and dismantled it. Piece by piece. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just evidence. Phone records showing Evan's obsessive calling pattern. Messages filled with accusations and implied threats. Witness testimony from Jennifer confirming prior aggression. Detective Reeves's report outlining inconsistencies in Evan's statements. Security footage timeline proving the staged property damage. The receipt dated the wrong day. And finally, the recovered fragment of body cam footage. The courtroom went quieter when that played. Grainy. Incomplete. But clear enough. Evan at the door. Officer Patterson asking questions. And then, that pause. 4 seconds. Long enough to think. Long enough to choose. Then Evan's voice shifting. Reaching. I think she said I'd regret it. Patterson. That's a threat. That was all it took. Not a lie. Not exactly. But not truth either. A suggestion. A push. A narrative being built in real time. Judge Walsh watched the clip once. Then again. Then she turned it off. When she spoke, her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Mr. Hale," she said, "this court finds your petition lacks credibility." Silence. "You presented yourself as a victim while engaging in a pattern of behavior that includes harassment, manipulation, and the filing of false reports." Evan's attorney shifted, tried to speak. She lifted one hand. He stopped. "You staged property damage to reinforce your claims," she continued. "You contacted or allowed others to contact witnesses in ways that can reasonably be interpreted as intimidation. And you provided statements to law enforcement that are, at best, misleading." Chloe didn't move beside me, didn't breathe, didn't blink. "The restraining order is denied." A pause. Then, "And this court is issuing a restraining order against you, Mr. Hale, on behalf of Ms. Brennan." That landed, harder than anything else. "You are to have no contact with her. You are to vacate the shared residence within 72 hours. You are barred from her workplace." Evan stood abruptly. "This is insane." "Sit down." 2 words. "Steele." He sat. Barely. Judge Walsh looked down at her notes. "Then back up. I am also referring this case to the district attorney for review of potential charges, including filing false reports, perjury, and conspiracy related to evidence tampering." That was the moment. The exact moment the structure broke. Not cracked. Not weakened. Broken. We left through the side exit. Chloe didn't speak until we were outside. Then she stopped walking and took a breath so deep it sounded like it hurt. "It's over," she said. I looked at her. "No," I said quietly. "It's shifting." Because endings like this don't come all at once. They unravel. They move fast after that. Faster than I expected. Maybe because too many things had already gone wrong for too many people. Maybe because once evidence tampering enters the conversation, departments stop protecting mistakes and start protecting themselves. 2 days later, we got the call. Evan had new counsel, a public defender. And suddenly, he wanted to cooperate. We met in Peter's office. Evan didn't look at Chloe. Didn't try. Didn't pretend. He sat with his hands folded, shoulders slightly hunched, like the performance had finally run out of energy. His attorney spoke for him. "There are communications," he said, "between Mr. Hale's brother and Officer Patterson." I felt Chloe go still beside me. "Text messages," the attorney continued, "arranged after the initial arrest. Discussion of managing the body cam issue." Managing. I almost smiled at that. "What exactly does that mean?" Peter asked. "It means," the attorney said carefully, "that Officer Patterson accessed the evidence server using credentials that were not his and deleted a segment of footage." There it was. Out loud. Documented. Real. "In exchange?" Peter asked. The attorney hesitated. Payment was discussed. Was it made? No. Of course not. People like Daniel don't pay once they've gotten what they need. "They have the messages," the attorney added. "Time-stamped, verifiable." I leaned back, closed my eyes for half a second, and let the last piece settle. Everything moved quickly after that. Because once corruption surfaces, it spreads through the system like a warning. Officer Patterson was arrested within 48 hours. Evidence tampering. Obstruction. Daniel Hale's situation worsened. Violation of prior conditions, witness intimidation now fully supported by testimony. And Evan took the deal. Reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation. At sentencing, the judge didn't soften anything. "Mr. Hale," she said, "you weaponized the legal system against an innocent person. You fabricated a narrative, manipulated law enforcement response, and escalated your actions when initial attempts succeeded." Evan stared at the table. Didn't argue. Didn't perform. Didn't speak. "The only reason your sentence is reduced," she continued, "is because your cooperation exposed further misconduct. That does not absolve you." She paused. 18 months. Chloe exhaled slowly beside me. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just release. 6 months later, we sat in a small diner near Chloe's new apartment. Different place. Different life. She looked lighter. Not healed. Not completely. But no longer carrying something that was never hers to begin with. "He texted me once," she said. I looked up. "From jail?" She nodded. I didn't answer. "Good." She stirred her coffee. I kept thinking, if I had just explained things better, if I had stayed calmer. I cut in gently. "No." She looked at me. "That's the lie he needed you to believe," I said. "That this was something you could have prevented." She held my gaze, then nodded, slowly. When we stepped outside, the air was cold but clean. The kind of cold that wakes you up instead of weighing you down. She hugged me before heading to her car. And this time, there was no hesitation in it, no doubt. That night, back in my quiet house, I sat at my desk again. Files open, notes spread. Another case waiting. Because the work doesn't stop. It never does. But sometimes, You get an ending that reminds you why you keep doing it. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear her voice in my head. 2:53 a.m. Mom, I need you. And I think about all the people who make that call, and nobody answers. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 29 years old. And my boyfriend told me I was insecure for not wanting him to sleep in the same bed as his female best friend. I said, "You're right." Then I ended the relationship, and somehow, life twisted hard enough for me to fall in love with her ex-boyfriend instead. People keep telling me that sounds too convenient, too cinematic, too perfectly cruel to be real. Trust me, if I'd written it myself, I would have made it less humiliating. Back then, my life looked steady from the outside. I worked as a civil engineer for a firm in North Carolina, the kind of job that sounds boring at parties, until somebody's retaining wall fails or a foundation starts cracking and suddenly everyone remembers structural design matters. I liked the work. I liked the order of it. Numbers made sense. Water followed rules. Soil loads did not gaslight you and then call you dramatic when you noticed the shift. I had a townhouse that I was absurdly proud of. 2 bedrooms, small fenced backyard. A garage I'd turned half into a workout space and half into storage for tools and weekend projects I always swore I'd finish on time. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I'd spent years making it feel lived in instead of staged. Hardwood floors in the living room, upgraded kitchen counters, built-in shelves in the office, warm lighting that made everything softer after sunset. And I had Bruno, 80 pounds of rescue dog devotion packed into a body that still believed he was lap-sized. He'd come into my life 4 years earlier after a friend of my sister found him wandering half-starved near a service road. I took him in temporarily. Temporary lasted about 6 hours, exactly the amount of time it took for him to curl against my legs on the couch and fall asleep, like he'd already decided I was home. He followed me everywhere after that. Kitchen, laundry room, bathroom door. If I moved, Bruno moved. And until about 8 months before everything blew up, there had also been my boyfriend, Mason. For a long time, I thought Mason was it for me. The person. The future. The man I'd eventually marry. We met at a wedding 3 years earlier. One of those big outdoor vineyard weddings where everything looked like it belonged in a magazine and everyone was slightly overdressed for the heat. He was a groomsman. I was a bridesmaid. We got trapped at the same table during the reception and ended up talking through half the night, while everyone else danced badly to early 2000s music. He was charming in a way that felt effortless at first. Funny without trying too hard. Easy to talk to. Attentive. He noticed details. He remembered things. He made me feel like I was the only person in the room, which is dangerous when you meet someone at exactly the moment you're open enough to believe that means something permanent. Our first date was coffee that turned into dinner. Our second date was a hike with Bruno, and Mason didn't complain once about the mud, the humidity, or the fact that my dog kept circling back every 2 minutes like he was conducting a background check. The third date, he came over to my place and we cooked together. By 6 months in, he was spending most nights at my townhouse. Officially, he still kept his apartment because his parents were traditional, and he said it was easier not to explain things yet. In practice, his apartment became the place where he kept mail, old shoes, and a set of dishes no one ever used. My place became ours in every visible way. For almost 3 years, I believed we were building towards something real. We talked about marriage, kids, timing, school districts, the boring grown-up details people only discuss when they think the relationship has real legs. I even started browsing ring styles once, not because I was proposing, but because I wanted to know what I liked in case he ever asked. That's how far gone I was, quietly researching forever while pretending I was totally chill. And yet, if I'm honest, there was always a thin thread of unease under everything. Nothing solid enough to accuse, nothing dramatic enough to point at. Just a feeling. A strange little flicker in my chest that showed up at odd moments and then vanished before I could inspect it too closely. Mason's parents loved me. His father respected that I worked in engineering. His mother treated me like I already belonged at family dinners. My parents liked him too. My mom thought he was polished and considerate. My dad appreciated that Mason could actually carry a conversation instead of staring at his phone. Only my sister stayed skeptical. Not openly, not enough to start a fight. But every now and then, she'd watch him too long with that narrowed expression she gets when she senses something rotten beneath a pretty surface. Then came Danielle. Danielle was Mason's best friend from high school. He'd known her forever. Same neighborhood, same school, prom photos together as friends. Years of inside jokes. Years of history. According to Mason, she was basically a sister to him. Purely platonic. Always had been. Always would be. I had no reason not to believe that. Everybody has old friends. Everybody has history. I wasn't interested in being the insecure girlfriend who couldn't handle opposite-sex friendships. In fact, I went out of my way not to be that woman. I wanted to be cool, trusting, mature. For most of our relationship, Danielle was just a name in stories. Then Mason found out she was moving back to North Carolina. I still remember the way he called me at work instead of waiting until I got home. He was excited, genuinely excited. His voice had that bright, lifted edge people get when something hits them deeper than they expected. "She's coming back," he said. "Her company opened a branch here. She's taking a senior role. Claire, this is huge. I haven't had her close by in years." I smiled into the phone and told him I was happy for him. And I was. At least I thought I was. I figured I'd finally meet this legendary best friend and maybe gain one more person in our orbit. I imagined easy double-date energy someday. Group dinners, harmless nostalgia, the kind of old friendship you make room for because it predates you and doesn't threaten anything. The first time I met Danielle was at an Italian restaurant Mason insisted was perfect for this. I wore nice jeans and a black blouse, made an effort, showed up open. Danielle arrived 20 minutes late, swept in like the evening had been waiting for her. She was beautiful in a deliberate, polished way, stylish without looking casual about it. The kind of woman who could make eye contact feel like a social ranking system. Her hug with Mason lasted a beat too long. Not obscene, not explicit, just intimate enough to register. Then she slid into the booth beside him instead of across from us. That was the first moment something inside me tightened. Dinner only got stranger from there. Every story circled back to their shared past. Every joke had a missing reference point that left me smiling half a second too late. Whenever I tried to enter the conversation, Danielle would answer politely, then pivot straight back to Mason like I was an interruption she was willing to tolerate but not include. I asked about her job. Short answer. I asked about her move. Short answer. Then another story about some ridiculous thing Mason did when he was 17, and suddenly they were both laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. I sat there stirring pasta I could barely taste, feeling like an extra in my own relationship. Mason either didn't notice, or worse, noticed and didn't care. I told myself first meetings could be awkward, that history naturally creates its own rhythm, that I was reading too much into one dinner. But on the drive home, with Bruno's leash rattling softly in the back seat because we'd picked him up from daycare on the way, I stared out the window and felt that thin thread of unease pull tighter. Because for the first time in nearly 3 years, I had the distinct, humiliating feeling that there was already a woman in Mason's life who mattered more than I did. And she had just come home. If Danielle had stayed a once-in-a-while friend, maybe Mason and I would have survived. Maybe I would have gone on telling myself I was mature enough to handle a little discomfort. Maybe I would have kept swallowing the tiny humiliations because none of them, on their own, looked big enough to justify a fight. That was the problem, though. Nothing happened all at once. It happened in layers. Danielle stopped being a person from Mason's stories and started becoming a permanent fixture in our actual life. Suddenly, she was everywhere. Mason wanted her at game nights. Mason wanted to invite her to Sunday brunch. Mason wanted to help her settle in, which somehow meant spending entire Saturdays at her apartment while I was at work, then coming home talking about her view, her kitchen, her design taste, her weird little quirks, like he found every detail charming. At first I tried. That matters to me now when I look back on it. I tried so hard to be fair. I asked questions. I smiled. I made room. I told myself not to be petty when she interrupted me. I told myself not to keep score when Mason laughed harder at her jokes than mine. I told myself that old friendships have momentum and that I was secure enough not to compete with history. But history was one thing. What they had was something else. Game nights became unbearable. We had a standing tradition with a small group of friends. Board games, cheap wine, takeout, Bruno weaving between people's legs hoping someone dropped chicken. It had always been easy, familiar, mine. Then Danielle entered the rotation and the whole temperature of the room shifted. She would arrive late and somehow still make it feel like we'd all been waiting on her. She'd toss her bag onto a chair, lean over Mason's shoulder, laugh at private references no one else understood. If I was explaining rules, she'd smirk and say, "Oh, Mason's terrible at this one," like I wasn't even the host. And Mason lit up every time she walked through the door. That was the part I couldn't unsee. It wasn't just affection. It was relief, like he could finally start having fun now that the person he actually wanted there had arrived. One night, while Mason and Danielle were in my kitchen talking in low voices over the open fridge like the rest of us didn't exist, my friend Travis stepped onto the back porch beside me. He didn't bother easing into it. "You seeing what I'm seeing?" he asked. I kept my eyes on Bruno, who was sniffing along the fence line in slow, distracted loops. They're old friends. Travis made a quiet sound in the back of his throat, somewhere between skepticism and pity. "Claire," he said carefully, "old friends don't usually act like they're auditioning to be a couple in somebody else's house." I should have listened. Instead, I crossed my arms tighter and said the line women like me say when we are trying to stay dignified inside something that is already insulting us. "I'm not going to be the jealous girlfriend." Travis looked at me for a long second. "No," he said. "You're being the reasonable girlfriend. There's a difference." I laughed it off because I didn't want him to be right. But his words stayed with me. And 2 weeks later, Mason came home on a Thursday night and blew the whole thing open with one sentence said far too casually. "Danielle and I are thinking about going to Asheville this weekend." I was standing at the stove making pasta, the kitchen warm with garlic and butter, and the kind of domestic normalcy that now feels almost cruel in memory. I turned halfway toward him. "You and Danielle?" "Yeah." He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and opened the fridge like this was nothing. "There's a music festival up there. We used to do stuff like that all the time. It'll be fun." I stared at him. Just stared. No apology. No build-up. No hesitation. He didn't ask if I was okay with it. Didn't say, "Do you mind?" Didn't even pretend to frame it as a conversation. He was informing me, like I was somebody he had to notify, not somebody whose feelings mattered. "I'm sorry," I said, "because sometimes your body buys time for your mind. You're going away for the weekend, alone, with Danielle." He gave me a look that was almost amused. "Why are you saying it like that?" Because that was how it was happening. Because there wasn't another way to say it that would make it less strange. I turned off the burner. "Can I come?" His answer came too fast. "There aren't enough tickets." I blinked. "That's convenient." He sighed immediately, as if I had already become difficult. "Claire, come on." "No, seriously, can I come? It's kind of last minute." "So invite someone else too. Make it a group trip. Rachel, Travis, whoever. I don't care." He leaned back against the counter and folded his arms. "Danielle doesn't really know your friends like that." I let out one short laugh because I honestly could not believe what I was hearing. "She also doesn't know me well enough to take my boyfriend on a private weekend trip without it being weird." That was the first time his face changed. Not hurt. Not guilty. Annoyed. "Why does everything have to be a problem with you lately?" The question landed harder than I expected because it told me something I hadn't let myself fully acknowledge yet. He had already rewritten the story in his own head. In his version, I was not a woman reacting normally to a disrespectful situation. I was an obstacle, an inconvenience, the person making innocent things ugly. I kept my voice level. "I'm asking normal questions, Mason, and I'm giving you normal answers." No, he wasn't. He was firing off preloaded excuses like he'd rehearsed this conversation on the drive home. The festival was nearly sold out. The hotel only had one room left. Danielle had already booked the car plan. Everything was set. Every solution I offered got cut off before it could breathe. It was like he needed the trip to stay exactly what it was, just the two of them. That mattered. I didn't have proof of anything. But instinct counts for something, even when people try to shame you out of trusting it. In the end, I did what women are so often taught to do inside relationships they're desperate not to damage. I swallowed it. I told myself trust had to be given if it was going to mean anything. So he went. He sent 2 photos all weekend. One of mountains, one of a stage in the distance, and one selfie from a coffee shop where Danielle's shoulder was pressed against his a little too naturally, her smile too soft, his expression too comfortable. I stared at that picture for so long my phone dimmed. When he came back Sunday night, he acted normal. That was almost the worst part. No guilt, no awkwardness, no extra tenderness to compensate. Just normal. I asked how it went. "Fun," he said. That was it. Fun. Then he tossed his bag in the bedroom and asked what I wanted for dinner, like he hadn't just spent 48 hours confirming every fear I was trying not to name. After Asheville, everything shifted. Not dramatically. Quietly. That made it worse. He got more guarded with his phone. He angled the screen away from me when texts came in. He started taking calls in the hallway or stepping outside because reception was better. He changed his password, and when I noticed, he smiled without warmth and said, "It's called basic security." Every small thing had a plausible explanation. That's what makes emotional betrayal so hard to prove while you're living inside it. Individually, each moment sounds petty. Collectively, they hollow you out. I found myself second-guessing everything. The timestamps, the tone in his voice when he said Danielle's name, the new way he went distant when I asked simple questions about his day. Every conversation started to feel like there was a hidden layer under it, one I wasn't allowed to touch. Then came the mountain lodge. His parents were renewing their vows for their 30th anniversary. Big family event. Out-of-town relatives. One of those sentimental weekends that come loaded with photo boards and speeches and stories about enduring love. Mason had been talking about it for months. He wanted me there. Said it mattered that I be there. Said his extended family needed to see we were serious. Said maybe one day that would be us, still standing beside each other decades later, laughing through old memories. I remember that now, and I almost get sick. Because when the sleeping arrangements came up, he said the most insane thing I have ever heard in a calm tone. Oh, by the way, I'm rooming with Danielle. I was sitting at the dining table with a legal pad, helping him figure out what time we needed to leave that Friday to beat traffic. I looked up slowly. You're what? He didn't even hear the danger in the question. The lodge is packed. Family gets priority on the better rooms. It just makes the most sense if Danielle and I share one of the upstairs rooms, and you can bunk with my cousin Brandon. I thought I had misheard him. I genuinely did. Maybe because no sane person expects her boyfriend to say something like that with the confidence of a man announcing weather. I put the pen down. You want to share a room with Danielle? He shrugged. It's not a big deal. And I'm supposed to sleep somewhere else. With Brandon, yeah, he snores, but you'll survive. There are moments in life when the absurdity is so complete that your body goes cold before your mind catches up. That was one of them. I stared at him. Mason, are you hearing yourself? His expression changed instantly into that patronizing calm people use when they've already decided your reaction is the problem. She's basically family, Claire. No, she's not. She is to me. And I'm what? The temporary guest? He exhaled sharply through his nose. Why are you making this weird? That sentence. That exact sentence. It still makes my skin prickle. Because I wasn't making anything weird. I was reacting to something already disrespectful, and he was trying to hand the discomfort back to me like it belonged there. I stood up. I am not comfortable with my boyfriend sharing a bed with another woman while I sleep in a different room. He rolled his eyes. It's Danielle. We've done this before. Before what? Before me? Great, you're not single now. Nothing is going to happen. That is not the point. It is the point, he snapped. You either trust me or you don't. No, the point is boundaries. The room went still after that. Just for a second. Then he laughed once. Short, humorless, disbelieving. Unbelievable. I felt my heartbeat climb into my throat. Explain it to me then. Explain why I'm supposed to be fine with this. Because you're supposed to know me better than this. I do know you, I said. That's why this matters. He stared at me, and something ugly settled behind his eyes. Irritation. Contempt. Maybe both. Then he said the word he must have known would cut deepest. You're insecure. There it was. The weapon. Not an answer. Not reassurance. A label. A fast way to make me defend my dignity instead of staying focused on his behavior. He kept going. You're jealous. You're controlling. And honestly, I'm getting tired of feeling like I have to manage your feelings every time you don't like something. Manage my feelings. I had spoken calmly. I had not yelled. I had not insulted him. I had stated one boundary that most people in monogamous relationships would consider obvious. And somehow, in his version of reality, I was unstable for having it. I took one breath, then another. I am asking not to be humiliated. He scoffed. No, you're asking me to rearrange my life because your ego can't handle that I have a female best friend. I don't remember crossing the room, but I remember the exact shape of the silence that followed. Because something inside me, something that had been trying to survive on patience and benefit of the doubt for months, finally stood up. He thought I was about to cry. I could see it in the way he watched me. Thought I was about to plead, to soften, to beg him to understand. Instead, I looked him right in the face and said very calmly, "You're right." He frowned. "What?" "You're right," I repeated. "I am insecure." He blinked, caught off guard. I nodded once. I'm insecure enough to know I will not stay in a relationship where my boyfriend thinks sharing a bed with another woman is something I should be grateful to tolerate. His whole expression changed. Confusion first, then disbelief, then the first flicker of panic. "Claire." "No," I said. "You don't get to do this to me and then act shocked that I'm done." He stared at me like the ground had shifted under his feet, and maybe it had, because for months he had been training me to stay in the conversation he wanted. Defend yourself, explain yourself, prove you are not crazy, prove you are cool enough, mature enough, trusting enough. I was done auditioning. And he hadn't seen that coming. For a second, Mason just stood there, like his brain needed time to catch up to what I had actually said. "You're done?" he repeated slowly, like testing the words for flaws. I didn't raise my voice, didn't pace, didn't cry. I just nodded. Yes. And that was the moment everything cracked. Because people like Mason don't expect consequences. Not real ones. They expect resistance, sure. Emotion. Arguments. Tears they can either soothe or weaponize. But not clarity, not finality. Not someone stepping out of the game entirely. "You're seriously breaking up with me over this?" he asked, a laugh slipping into his voice that sounded more defensive than amused. "I'm breaking up with you," I said evenly, "because you think I'm the problem for having a problem with this." "That's not what I said." "It is," I cut in. "You called me insecure. You called me controlling. You turned a basic boundary into a character flaw." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. "You're twisting things." "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally seeing them clearly." That line landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders tightened. And then came the shift. Right on schedule. First, anger. "So that's it?" he snapped. 3 years and you're just going to throw it away because you can't handle me having a friend?" I didn't move. "I didn't throw anything away," I said. "You've been doing that for months. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening." His jaw clenched, then softening. He stepped closer, voice dropping. "Claire, come on, you know I love you." There it was, the pivot. The part where I was supposed to melt. Except now, hearing it, I felt something strange instead of comfort. Distance. Because love isn't something you pull out like a card when you need to win an argument. Love is something you show consistently. And he hadn't. "I'm not doing this with you," I said. "With me?" he echoed. "What does that even mean?" "It means I'm not going to stand here while you cycle through every version of yourself, trying to find the one that works on me." That stopped him cold. For a second, the mask slipped. Then came the tears. Real ones, maybe. Or practiced. At that point, I honestly couldn't tell anymore. "I didn't mean it like that," he said, voice cracking. "I was frustrated. I shouldn't have called you insecure. That was wrong." I watched him. Waited. Because apologies are easy. Patterns are harder. "I can fix this," he rushed on. "I'll talk to my parents. We'll share a room. Danielle can stay somewhere else. It's not a big deal." And there it was. The bargaining stage. The sudden willingness to fix something he had just spent an hour defending. Not because he understood. Because he felt me leaving. And that scared him more than losing the argument. "It's already a big deal," I said. "No, it's not." "It is," I repeated, "because you didn't think it was a problem until I decided to walk away." He opened his mouth, then closed it. Searching, recalculating, trying to figure out which version of himself would work next. Then, anger again. Sharp, defensive. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "You're overreacting. This is insane." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. You don't get to call me insane for refusing to tolerate something that disrespects me. "I didn't disrespect you." "You did," I said. "And worse, you made me feel like I was wrong for noticing." That hit harder than anything else I'd said. Because that was the truth he couldn't easily twist. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, uncomfortable, final. Then he tried one last move. The one people save for when everything else fails. He grabbed his keys. "Fine," he said. "If you're going to be like this, I'll leave." And he walked toward the door. Paused. Turned slightly. Waiting. For me to stop him. For me to say his name. For me to chase. I didn't move. Didn't say a word. I just stood there, calm and still, watching him like I was already on the other side of this. And that's when he knew. Really knew. I wasn't bluffing. The door opened. Closed. And just like that, 3 years ended with the quiet click of a lock. The silence afterward was louder than any fight. Bruno lifted his head from his bed, ears twitching, eyes moving between me and the door like he was trying to understand why the energy in the room had shifted so suddenly. I exhaled slowly. Then I moved. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Methodically. I grabbed a box from the garage. Then another. And I started packing. His clothes first. Folded. Organized and clean. Then his shoes. His extra toiletries from the bathroom. The random chargers. The books. The half-used cologne bottle on the dresser. I didn't rush. I didn't hesitate. I just did it, like I was completing the task I had already accepted. Bruno followed me from room to room, quiet, observant. At one point, he sat near the pile of boxes, head tilted, like he was trying to decide if something important was leaving. "Yeah," I murmured, scratching behind his ears. "I think it is." By the time Mason came back an hour later, because of course he came back, the boxes were lined neatly by the door. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the room, then landing on them. "You're serious," he said. I nodded once. "Yes." Something in his face broke then. Not in a dramatic way. In a small, contained way, like a crack running through glass. "You're really doing this," he whispered. "I already did." He stood there for a long moment, then slowly walked over, picked up one of the boxes, set it back down, like he didn't know what to do with his hands. "This is a mistake," he said. "Maybe," I replied, "but it's mine to make." He looked at me like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to fight harder, but there was nothing left to grab onto. No emotion to twist, no chaos to control, just a decision, and he couldn't undo that. Eventually, he took the boxes, one by one, carried them out. No yelling, no more pleading, just quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes when something is truly over. The next few weeks were strange. Not dramatic, not explosive, just empty. 3 years is a long time to share space with someone. Their habits linger. Their absence echoes. I'd reach for my phone to text him something stupid, then remember there was no him anymore. I'd hear a noise in the house and expect him to be there. I'd cook too much food out of habit. Even Bruno took a few days to stop waiting by the door at night. But alongside the loss, there was something else. Relief. A quiet, steady kind of peace that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Like my body finally stopped bracing for something. Travis came over most nights that first week. Pizza, movies, bad commentary. No advice, just presence. Exactly what I needed. Work helped too. I threw myself into projects, stayed late reviewing plans, volunteered for site visits nobody else wanted. Structure, predictability, things that made sense. My boss started mentioning that promotion again. Said he'd noticed the extra effort. Said I was focused. He had no idea. 3 weeks after the breakup, I got a message. Instagram. From someone I didn't recognize. Ethan Walker. His profile picture showed him standing on a beach with a golden retriever, wind pushing his hair back, eyes squinting slightly in the sun. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I opened the message. "Hey, I know this is random, but I think we should talk. I used to date Danielle, and there's something you deserve to know." I stared at the screen. Read it again. Then again. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct told me this was drama. Complicated. Messy. Something I didn't need. But there was another feeling underneath that. Something sharper. Something unfinished. Because deep down, I knew my relationship hadn't ended over one argument about a room. It had ended because of something bigger. Something I still didn't fully understand. And somehow, this stranger might have the missing piece. I typed back 2 words. "I'm listening." We met the next afternoon. Public place. Coffee shop. Neutral ground. The kind of setting where nothing too dramatic is supposed to happen, even when everything underneath is already unraveling. I got there early. Not because I was eager, but because I needed the extra few minutes to decide if I was actually going to go through with this. I ordered a coffee I didn't really want. Sat near the window. Watched people walk by like their lives made sense. Then he walked in. Ethan Walker. He looked exactly like his profile picture, which shouldn't have mattered, but did anyway. Same quiet confidence. Same steady presence. He wasn't flashy, didn't try to be, but there was something grounded about him. The kind of energy that didn't need to announce itself to be felt. He spotted me immediately. Walked over. "Claire?" he asked. I nodded. "Ethan?" We shook hands. Sat down. And for a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Not awkward. Just careful. Like 2 people stepping onto the same fragile surface, testing whether it would hold. "I'll just say it straight," he began, wrapping his hands around his coffee like he needed something to anchor himself. "Danielle and I were together for 2 years. While I thought we were building a future, she was still emotionally tied to Mason. There it was. No build-up, no softening. Just the truth, placed directly between us. I didn't react immediately. Didn't interrupt. I just let it sit. "Emotionally tied how?" I asked. Ethan gave a small, humorless exhale. "The kind where you're technically in a relationship, but you're not the priority." That landed harder than anything else he could have said, because I knew that feeling too well. He continued. "She told me they were like siblings," he said, "that nothing had ever happened, that it never would." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was identical. "Same script," I murmured. He nodded. "Yeah." Took me a while to realize I wasn't hearing the truth. I was hearing the version that kept me from asking the right questions. I leaned back slightly, arms crossing, without me realizing. "When did you start noticing something was off?" Ethan didn't hesitate. "The first time I saw them together." That made my stomach twist. "Go on." "She came to visit me in Atlanta," he said. "Stayed for a long weekend. I thought it would be a chance for all of us to get to know each other. I even offered to take time off work." He paused briefly. I didn't need to. I knew what was coming before he said it. "Because she already had plans with Mason," I said quietly. Ethan met my eyes. "Yeah, The confirmation felt like a piece of something sliding into place inside me, something I had been resisting. She was comfortable with him, he continued. Too comfortable, touching his arm, finishing his sentences, talking in ways that didn't include me. I told myself it was normal. Old friends, history. I let out a slow breath. Yeah, that's what I told myself too. He gave a small nod, like we had just silently agreed on something bigger than either of us wanted to admit. I found messages about a month later, he said. That made me sit forward. What kind of messages? Nothing explicit enough to prove anything if you wanted to argue it, he said, but enough to know it wasn't platonic. Pet names, late-night texts, plans that sounded like anticipation. My chest tightened, because suddenly, everything I had felt but couldn't prove had language. When Mason turned his phone away, when he stepped outside to take calls, when work became something vague and untouchable. You confronted her? I asked. Ethan laughed softly. Yeah, and she flipped it on me so fast I almost apologized for bringing it up. I felt that. Deep. She called you insecure, I said. Controlling, he added. Jealous. Paranoid. We both went quiet. Because that wasn't coincidence. That was a pattern. A strategy. A script they both knew how to follow. The gaslighting was clean, Ethan said after a moment. No yelling, no obvious lies. Just enough doubt to make you question your own instincts. I nodded slowly. That's exactly what it felt like. For a while, we just sat there. Two people who had lived different versions of the same story. I believed her, he admitted. For a while. Tried to be more understanding. Tried to be the guy who didn't make a big deal out of nothing. I looked down at my coffee. Yeah, I said quietly. Me too. Then he told me the part that shifted everything. When I told her I was willing to move for her, to build something serious, she hesitated. I glanced up. And a month later, Mason moved back here. There it was. The timeline. Clean. Precise. Damning. Everything aligned. The distance. The shift. The emotional pull. Like two people circling each other from different lives until the timing finally matched. And she broke up with you? I asked. Ethan shook his head. No, I broke up with her because I realized I was the placeholder. The word hit like a physical thing. Placeholder. That was it. That was exactly what I had been too. Not the future. Not the endgame. Just the interim. The safe option until they could have each other again. We didn't speak for a few seconds. Didn't need to. Because for the first time since my breakup, everything made sense. Not in a way that felt good, but in a way that felt clear. And clarity is a kind of relief, even when it hurts. We stayed there for 3 hours, talking, comparing timelines, filling in gaps, matching details that had once seemed random, but now formed a complete picture. But something unexpected happened in the middle of all that. It stopped feeling like an interrogation, and started feeling like connection. Ethan was easy to talk to, not in the overwhelming, all-consuming way Mason had been at the beginning. In a steadier way, a quieter way. He listened. Actually listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't redirect. Didn't make the conversation about himself unless it mattered. At one point, he showed me a picture of his dog, a golden retriever named Biscuit. Tongue out, eyes bright, pure chaos in the shape of a living creature. I smiled without meaning to. Bruno would love him, I said. Ethan smirked slightly. Biscuit loves everyone. It's kind of his brand. We exchanged numbers before we left. Not as a big moment. Not as anything intentional. Just naturally. Let me know if you remember anything else, he said. I will, I replied. But that wasn't really what kept the conversation going. It started with small things. A text about something we forgot to mention. A meme about dogs. A random thought late at night that didn't need an answer but felt easier to send than to keep. Then coffee again. Then dinner. Then a walk with both dogs where Bruno and Biscuit immediately decided they were best friends and spent the entire time running in chaotic circles while Ethan and I followed behind, laughing like it wasn't the simplest kind of happiness in the world. Somewhere along the way, the weight shifted. We weren't just two people comparing damage anymore. We were two people who actually liked each other. That part surprised me because I hadn't been looking, hadn't been ready, hadn't been trying to replace anything. And yet, it happened anyway. Naturally, quietly, without pressure. About 2 months after that first coffee, he came over for dinner. We sat on the couch afterward, some movie playing in the background neither of us was paying attention to, and I turned to him. Are we doing this? I asked. He looked at me, a small smile forming. I thought we already were. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. And just like that, we were. Of course, it didn't take long for things to circle back. They always do. The moment Ethan and I posted a picture together, the reactions started. First, curiosity, then whispers, then messages, and eventually, Mason. The first message from Mason came less than an hour after the photo went up. No greeting, no build-up. Just, "You're really with him?" I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the table. Ethan noticed, but he didn't ask. That was one of the first things I learned about him. He didn't push where I wasn't ready to go. He trusted me to bring things to him when I wanted to. So I did. Eventually, I picked the phone back up, opened the message again, and showed him. He read it once, handed the phone back. "That was fast," he said calmly. "Yeah," I replied. "News travels." We both knew how. Mutual friends. Social media. People who thought they were being helpful by checking in, or people who just liked the drama. I didn't respond. Not that night. Not the next morning. But silence, I learned, doesn't always end things. Sometimes it escalates them. The text started stacking. First, almost polite. "I think we should talk. You don't understand the full story." "He's not who you think he is." Then sharper. "Danielle says he's lying. You're making a mistake. You're doing this to hurt me." That one made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was revealing. Everything to Mason still centered around him. Even now, even after everything. I showed Ethan. He shook his head slightly. "They really don't change the script, do they?" "No," I said. They just swap the audience." I blocked Mason's number that afternoon. It felt clean. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just necessary. Danielle didn't stay quiet either. She posted vague things online. Quotes about betrayal. About fake people. About truth always coming out. The kind of post designed to sound deep while saying nothing specific enough to be challenged. Ethan showed me one. We both just stared at it for a second. Then he snorted. "The irony is impressive. Almost artistic," I said. And we let it go. Because that was the difference now. We didn't need to respond to everything. We didn't need to defend ourselves. We knew what had happened. That was enough. From what we heard through the same grapevine that carried gossip about us, Mason and Danielle weren't doing well. At all. Which shouldn't have surprised me. But still did. Because part of me had expected their story to at least look perfect from the outside. Instead, it was unraveling. Fast. They fought. Constantly. About trust. About phones. About where the other person was. About who they were texting. About things that sounded painfully familiar. She checked my messages. He's being paranoid. She doesn't trust me. He's overreacting. It was almost symmetrical. The exact same accusations. Just pointed in different directions. One night, Travis called me, barely containing his amusement. "Claire," he said, "you are not going to believe this." "I might," I replied. "Try me." They broke up. Again. Again? Yeah, third time this month. I closed my eyes briefly. Not out of satisfaction. Out of recognition. Because relationships built on blurred lines don't suddenly become clear just because the original obstacle is gone. If anything, they get worse. Meanwhile, my life felt steady. Not perfect. Not cinematic. Just right. Ethan and I moved in together about 4 months after we started dating. Not because we rushed. Because it made sense. We found a small house on the edge of town with a big fenced yard that made both Bruno and Biscuit completely lose their minds the first time they saw it. They ran for hours that day. Actual hours. Like they had just been handed the greatest gift of their lives. Ethan and I sat on the back steps watching them. Boxes still unpacked. Kitchen half organized. Life in progress. "This is kind of insane," I said. He smiled slightly. "Yeah." I leaned back on my hands. "But it feels right." He nodded. "It does." No grand speech. No overpromising. Just truth. Simple. Steady. Real. Our families met. And for the first time in a long time, there was no tension under the surface. No performance. No guessing. My mom loved him. My dad respected him. My sister pulled me aside at one point and said quietly, "This one, you don't have to convince yourself about." And that meant more than anything else. The confrontation happened on a Saturday morning. Farmer's market. Bright sun. Crowded. Normal. Until it wasn't. I saw them before they saw us. Mason and Danielle. Walking side by side. Close. But not comfortable. There was a stiffness between them that hadn't been there before. I felt Ethan's hand shift slightly against mine. Grounding. "Steady. We can leave," he said quietly. I shook my head. No. Because I wasn't going to run anymore. They spotted us a second later. And changed direction. Of course they did. Mason stopped a few feet away. Looked at me. Then at Ethan. Then back at me. "Claire." Just my name. Like it still belonged to him somehow. "Hi, Mason," I said calmly. Danielle crossed her arms. "This is interesting." Ethan didn't react. Didn't engage. Just stood there. Present. Unshaken. "You really believe him?" Danielle said, looking directly at me. I tilted my head slightly. "Believe what?" that we did anything wrong. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was exhausting how predictable it all was. You didn't? I asked. Mason stepped in quickly. That's not what she means. No, I said, cutting him off gently. Let her answer. Danielle hesitated, just for a second, and that was enough. Because people who are telling the truth don't usually need that pause. Ethan finally spoke. Calm. Even. Or we can skip this, he said. We all know what happened. Mason's jaw tightened. You think you won something here? He asked. Ethan shrugged slightly. I'm not competing. That hit. Hard. Because Mason had always treated everything like a competition. Attention. Control. Position. And Ethan simply didn't. Danielle scoffed. You two deserve each other. I squeezed Ethan's hand lightly. Yeah, I said, we do. Not defensive. Not angry. Just certain. That seemed to bother them more than anything else. Because there was nothing left to twist. Nothing left to provoke. No reaction they could use. So they left. Not dramatically. Not with a final word. Just walked away. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt nothing. No anger. No regret. No lingering attachment. Just done. 2 months later, Mason texted me again. From a new number. Of course. A long message this time. About how he understood now. How he saw things differently. How he had lost something real. How he wanted another chance. I read it. Once. Then I typed, I hope you figure things out, but I've moved on. Take care. And I blocked the number. For the last time. A week later, Travis sent me a screenshot. Mason's profile. Relationship status, single. Danielle's profile, back at her parents' place. Vague posts about healing and growth. I stared at it for a second. Then I handed my phone to Ethan. He glanced at it, then handed it back. Anyway, he said, nodding toward the kitchen. Your turn to cook tonight. I laughed. Wow, brutal. Fair, he replied. Later that night, Bruno and Biscuit were sprawled across the couch, completely exhausted from the dog park. Ethan was setting the table, humming something off-key. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, just watching. No tension, no second-guessing, no quiet feeling that something was off. Just peace, the kind I didn't even realize I had been missing until it was there. And that's when it finally hit me. I didn't win because Mason and Danielle lost. I won the moment I stopped staying somewhere I had to keep proving I deserved to be respected. Everything after that